Chapter 1993. There was no one else who could eat melons on their own heads. Hiziji and the others looked at her in confusion. Chu Luiyue waved her hand. Cough, it's nothing, it's nothing. I just suddenly choked. However, where did you guys get this news? Why didn't she know that she had used this method to enter the Divine Ruins world? You guys don't know about this. Hiziji and the others' gazes became even stranger. Hizailan curled her lips slightly and said disdainfully, Big brother, only the people with status in the few great dynasties know about this. Who knows where they came from? It's normal that they don't know. Chu Luiyue, even though she had always been sharp-tongued, she couldn't think of anything to refute this time. She touched her nose and ignored her man's somewhat mocking gaze. We have naturally heard of the name of the Tianling dynasty's princess. Rong Xiu didn't seem to care about Hizailan's words and chuckled softly. But we have always lived in seclusion before, so we have never heard of this matter. Hiziji frowned and looked at his sister with a warning look. It was indeed a bit too much to say such words in front of others. Fortunately, the other party didn't seem to mind. Hizailan snorted softly, but didn't dare to be presumptuous again. Hiziji pondered for a moment. It seemed that these two people really didn't know anything, he asked tentatively. Then, do you two know about the Divine Ruins world? Rong Xiu nodded. Hiziji heaved a sigh of relief. Knowing this, it wasn't difficult to explain. It's a long story. More than a year ago, the Tianling dynasty's princess, Sheng Wanyu, broke through the door realm and entered the Divine Ruins world. Moreover, it was said that she was still doing well in the Divine Ruins world and was famous. Everyone yearned for it, so naturally, they all wanted to imitate her. However, how could it be so easy to enter the Divine Ruins world? Many people begged for it, but there was no way in. It was only when the trial in the cloud state began that they were given a rare opportunity. It was said that breaking through to the high god realm was a piece of cake in the Divine Ruins world. Therefore, everyone was rushing to Yunzhou. Tomorrow was the day of the third trial. Therefore, the entire Yunzhou city was bustling with activity. This explanation was easy to understand. However, Chu Luiyue still frowned. Because there was a crucial problem in all of this. How did the news of her going to the Divine Ruins world get out? She did not deliberately publicize this matter, so there were not many people outside the Divine Ruins who knew about it. How did it spread to such an extent that it was causing such an uproar? There were even rumors that she was doing extremely well in the Divine Ruins world. Someone was deliberately leaking this information. But, what was the purpose? If she had not come here today, she would not have known that such a situation had occurred outside the Divine Ruins world. It was clear that the enemy's primary target was not her, but cultivators like Hiziji and the others. Chu Luiyue looked around and asked in a seemingly casual manner. Since they're all here for cultivation, why are all the young cultivators here? Why aren't there anyone else? Hiziji laughed heartily. Naturally, it's because only cultivators under the age of 35 can participate in the trial. Furthermore, the younger one was, the better one's talent was, and the better one's results would be in the trial. This rule is a little strange. Chu Luiyue thought to herself. Generally speaking, only when the academy recruited students or the sect selected disciples would there be a limit to the age of the cultivators. She did not know what kind of situation this trial was. There was actually such a rule. It's also because of this that many young cultivators are flocking to this place. Hiziji said. Naturally, this was also the reason why they were here. Seeing that Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue were deep in thought, Hiziji thought that they were also tempted. He raised his hand and pointed forward. Yes, that heavenly Yin mountain is the place for tomorrow's trial. Brother Bai Li, if the two of you want to participate, you can go there tomorrow. Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue were both using aliases. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Go directly. That's right. As long as you are not over 35 years old and have reached a certain level of talent and strength, you can participate in the trial after passing the gatekeeper's test. Gatekeeper. That's right. The most outstanding batch of people selected from the trial will be able to follow the gatekeeper to the divine ruins world. As Zg spoke, his face revealed a hint of longing. It could be seen that he was indeed filled with anticipation for this matter. Rong Xiu's expression became somewhat meaningful. It seemed that this trial was specially organized by someone. That's right, the other party deliberately attracted so many talented cultivators, so they naturally had to make all the arrangements. However, Zg and the others did not realize what Rong Xiu was thinking. They only thought that he was still thinking about participating in the trial. As they spoke, the group walked to the door of an inn. The trial would begin tomorrow, so they naturally had to rest well today. Zg and the others chose to stay here. Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu were too lazy to bother and also stayed. After the two sides said goodbye, they each returned to their own rooms. Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu's rooms were on the 3rd floor, facing the street. When they opened the window, they could see the bustling crowd on the street. Looking into the distance, they could see row upon row of houses in the city, as well as, in the distance, the towering heavenly Yin mountain. Chu Luiyue crossed her arms and leaned against the window coffin. She could not help but smile. I didn't expect that after so many troubles in there, it's still like this when I come out. I've been away for so long, but there are still people thinking about me. Rong Xiu poured a cup of tea. White mist rose in spirals, enshrouding his handsome face. Madam is too outstanding, that's why people can't forget you. Chu Luiyue snorted softly. I don't think it's a good thing to be remembered like this. Someone was deliberately revealing her whereabouts, but she did not even know who the other party was. She really did not like the feeling of the enemy being in the dark while she was in the light. Anne. I have always felt that the appearance of this Yunzhou is very strange. Chu Luiyue raised her hand, and her slender white fingernails lightly scratched the hollow wooden window. Her eyes flashed. Although the entire city looks quite old, many places in the city have obviously just been renovated. Look, even the paint on the window is newly painted. But the workmanship is very meticulous. Everything looked tidy, clean, and simple. Most people would not be able to tell. What's more, most of the people who came here were cultivators participating in the trial. Who would pay attention to this? Rong Xiu picked up the teacup, lowered his eyes, and put it down again with a half-smile. Maybe, it was not an accident to come here from Peach Blossom Dock. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1994. Chu Luiyue's eyes lit up. You mean, the gate realm leads directly to this place? Rong Xiu's smile deepened. We'll know when we go to the heavenly Yin mountain tomorrow. The entire cloud state was immersed in excitement and excitement. Early in the morning, Chu Luiyue was woken up by all kinds of noises outside. He could even hear a few familiar voices outside the door. Big brother, are you really going to ask those two to come with us? Xylan asked arrogantly. I think they don't even know what this trial is, so they probably won't go. Let's not bother about them. She really didn't like those two. Their appearances and clothes were clearly very ordinary, but when they saw them, they didn't show any respect at all. She really didn't know what was so good about those two. Zg glanced at her. More friends means more paths. Why don't you understand this principle? Why don't I understand? I think Big Brother is the one who's confused. If they really participate in the trial, won't they become our competitors? Who would find themselves competitors? Zg shook his head and didn't intend to continue persuading her. His sister didn't have a bad heart, but she was spoiled, willful, and narrow-minded. There were so many people who came to participate in the trial, and there were almost countless competitors. What difference would one or two more people make to the result? On the contrary, if he could rope them in, he might have a higher chance of winning in the final competition. He had a feeling that these two people weren't so ordinary. Thinking of this, Ziji walked over. Just as he raised his hand and was about to knock, the door was pulled open from the inside. A tall figure appeared in front of him. Ziji's movements froze. "Brother Bailey, what, you're already up?" From the looks of it, what they said just now had probably been heard. Ziji was embarrassed. Rong Xiao only nodded with a normal expression. "My wife and I also plan to go to the Heavenly Yin Mountain today." Ziji looked at him and found that he didn't seem to have any intention of pursuing the matter. He couldn't help but secretly sigh in relief. He didn't know why, but in front of this man, he always felt an inexplicable sense of reverence. Even though the other party had always been very polite and courteous, the natural nobility and pressure that seemed to come from his bones was still hard to ignore. Then let's go together. When the time comes, we can take care of each other. What does Brother Bailey think?" Ziji asked nervously. "That couldn't be better." Chu Luiyue walked up from behind and said with a smile. Ziji was slightly taken aback. He didn't notice it yesterday, but now that he was standing close to her, he realized that this woman actually had a pair of extremely beautiful eyes. Especially when he smiled. As soon as this thought flashed through his mind, Rong Xiao turned around and reached out his hand to Chu Luiyue. He conveniently blocked Ziji's line of sight. Only then did Ziji come to his senses. He immediately retracted his gaze, feeling vexed in his heart. It wasn't as if he had never seen a beautiful woman before, so it was rather rude of him to do so. He took a step back. "Then shall we go over now? Otherwise, there will be a lot of people on the street later." The moment they stepped out of the door, Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiao realized what Ziji meant. Because the number of people on the street was much more than yesterday. It was still early in the morning. In a while, it would really be crowded. Chu Luiyue looked at the lively crowd and suddenly said, "There are so many people here. Quite a number of people have come. I'm afraid that many geniuses from various empires have rushed over," Xilan sneered. "Of course. As a cultivator, who doesn't want to cross the gate realm and enter the divine ruins world and become a high god expert?" Even if the hope was slim and there were many difficulties, there were still people who came one after another. As she spoke, she scanned Chu Luiyue from head to toe and snorted. "People like you basically have no chance." When Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiao came, they had deliberately suppressed their cultivation bases. Xilan only thought that the two of them were not high in cultivation, so she did not put them in her eyes. Chu Luiyue was not angry at this, and only smiled indifferently. Her purpose for coming here was different from theirs. Seeing Chu Luiyue's reaction, Xilan felt as if her fist had landed on cotton. She was a little angry, so she simply snorted coldly and did not say anything else. However, at this moment, Chu Luiyue suddenly said softly, "So you're saying that those who had the best results in the trial all entered the divine ruins world?" "Of course." Xilan replied resolutely. "If not for that, why would so many people come to the cloud region?" This woman's question was truly laughable. Just as she was about to ridicule him a little more, she heard Chu Luiyue continue, "Then have those people ever returned after entering the divine ruins world?" Xilan was stunned, and then looked at her as if she was looking at a monster. "Of course not. After going to the divine ruins world, who would return here?" The divine ruins world was an existence that everyone yearned to go to. If one had the opportunity to go there, break through the shackles and become a high god powerhouse, or even stronger, how many cultivators yearned for this the most? Who would return? A dark light flashed in Chu Luiyue's eyes, but it disappeared in an instant. Xilan wanted to say something else, but she was pulled by Ziji, so she could only shut up. After that, the group did not say anything else and just continued forward. There were more and more people around them. Mixed in the crowd, they were not very eye-catching. They were like drops of water merging into a river, swept in the direction of the heavenly mountain. After about an hour, they finally arrived at the foot of the heavenly mountain. The terrain here was open, and everyone stood in groups of 3 to 5. From afar, it was a vast expanse of darkness. There were at least 500 to 600 people. Furthermore, these people could be considered rare cultivation geniuses outside of the divine ruins. Even Chu Luyue had never seen so many talented young cultivators gathered together in the Tianling dynasty. There should be a lot of cultivators from the dynasty here. But with so many people gathered together, it was not noisy. Most people did not speak much, and only a few whispered a few words. There was an inexplicable tension in the atmosphere. Obviously, they were all quite concerned about the trial that was about to begin. Chu Liuyue's gaze swept across the crowd intentionally or unintentionally. She actually wanted to see if there were people from the Tianling dynasty here. Suddenly, her eyes narrowed. In the crowd in the distance, there was a young man standing alone. He was only wearing a loose gray linen shirt, and there were no extra accessories on his body. His already thin figure became even thinner. Her soft, short, golden hair glowed faintly under the morning sun. Chu Liuyue's heart suddenly jumped. Xiao Zhou. Digression, 6:30 a.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1995. Almost at the same time, Xiao Zhou sensed her gaze and raised his head to look over. The moment he saw Chu Luyue, his eyes widened slightly. Surprise, joy, disbelief, many emotions surged out, almost causing his emotions to surge. He subconsciously raised his leg, intending to come over. Chu Luyue shook her head calmly. The small boat immediately understood and stopped in its tracks. He forced himself to look away. I almost forgot, this is Cloud State. There were still many people watching him in the dark. He could not act rashly at this time, lest he bring her any trouble. Thinking of this, Xiao Zhou lowered his head slightly, as if nothing had happened. All of this happened in the blink of an eye, and there was a crowd between the two sides, so even if someone noticed Xiao Zhou's momentary daze, they would not be able to tell what was going on. Chu Luyue quickly retracted her gaze. However, her heart was still beating rapidly. She never thought that she would run into Xiao Zhou here. When she decided to go to the Divine Ruins world, Xiao Zhou was still unconscious. Chu Luyue could only leave him behind. Who would have thought that they would meet again here? She did not know how his body was now, and why did he appear here alone? Countless questions surged in her mind. Chu Luyue took a deep breath. Rong Xiu followed her gaze and immediately understood why she had such a reaction. He held her hand. His slightly calloused palm was broad, strong, and very warm. Chu Luyue's heart gradually calmed down. Since everyone was here, there was no hurry to meet each other. Let's see what the heavenly mountain was like first. Just as she was thinking, the sound of something breaking through the air was heard. Chu Luyue subconsciously looked up and saw a figure flying up from the top of the heavenly mountain. Noticing the commotion, everyone quieted down completely and raised their heads to look. Some people could not help but reveal excited expressions, and their eyes were filled with admiration as they looked at that person. Chu Luyue had a faint guess in her heart. This person, perhaps, heavenly mountain gatekeeper, Hongin. Welcome, everyone, to participate in the trial today. As expected. Chu Luyue's mind calmed down. This person was indeed the so-called gatekeeper. She narrowed her eyes slightly and carefully sized up that person. He floated in the air, high and mighty. He looked to be in his 30s and was not tall, but the pressure from his body could not be ignored. High God! Chu Liu's thoughts. This kind of strength was very common in the divine ruins world, but here, it was an extremely top-level existence. Sure enough, as soon as the pressure spread out, the expressions of the many cultivators at the foot of the mountain became solemn. The expression between their brows became even more respectful and careful. This was that person's goal. At this moment, there was a sudden commotion in front of them. Chu Luiyue looked over and immediately frowned. Xiao Zhou was standing in front of the bronze mirror. Half of his arm had already reached in. It was obvious that he could enter smoothly. However, he lowered his head slightly, and for some reason, he pulled his arm back. This action shocked everyone present. Hong An's expression was also slightly serious. What's wrong with you? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1996. Xiao Zhou retracted his hand, took a step back, and said indifferently, I don't want to participate in this trial anymore. I quit. As soon as he said that, everyone was shocked. The scene suddenly fell into an awkward silence. Many people looked at each other. What was going on? He said he didn't want to participate and he didn't want to. Half of his arm had already reached in, and now he said he wanted to quit. This was too casual. Hong An obviously did not expect Xiao Zhou to say such a thing, and his expression turned cold. Are you sure? There were countless cultivators who wanted to participate in this trial. This was the first time he had seen someone suddenly want to quit halfway through. Moreover, it was obvious that he could get it through the review. It's good that he quit. This way, we'll have one less competitor. That's right. He doesn't want to participate, but there are many people who want to participate. He really doesn't know what's good for him. All kinds of discussions could be heard in low voices. Little Boat's expression seemed to waver a little. He pursed his lips, and after a moment, he said hesitantly, let me think about it. After saying that, he took a few steps back and made way. There was a burst of laughter from the crowd. Think about it again. Who did he think he was to put on airs like this? The gatekeeper's temper was not that easy to deal with. Hong An also frowned, and he was very annoyed. He had never encountered such a situation before. Those who were able to come here were all here for cultivation. Who would repeat this? He was about to reprimand him when his gaze suddenly froze. That young man was actually a rank 9 warrior. And it seemed that he was only a step away from breaking through to the high god realm. He didn't look old either. Among these people, he was indeed one of the best. Thinking of this, he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. If he really let him go, it would be a great loss. Hong An hesitated for a moment, and his expression relaxed. Then I'll give you some more time to think about it. Everyone was in an uproar. Obviously, they did not expect Hong An to be so lenient and give the young man a chance to go back on his word. Xiao Zhou heard this, but there was not much surprise on his beautiful and exquisite face. He just nodded. Continue. With Hong An's order, the others no longer cared about the small boat and began to line up again for the inspection. After that, the process went very smoothly. He Ziji and He Xilan successfully passed, but the remaining people who came with them were all eliminated. He Ziji then turned to look at Rong Xiao and Chu Luiyue. He was also very curious as to whether the two of them could pass. Rong Xiao walked in front. His expression was calm as he walked forward. The surface of the bronze mirror flowed past him like water. With a single step, he crossed the bronze mirror and successfully passed. Chu Luiyue followed behind Rong Xiao. After Rong Xiao went over, it was her turn. Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes as he recalled Xiao Zhou's reaction. He was on high alert. Of course, Xiao Zhou would not do that for no reason. He had his own considerations, and at the same time, he was warning her. Chu Luiyue suppressed her aura as much as possible and walked forward. Buzz! The moment she touched the surface of the mirror, alarm bells went off in her head. The water droplet that had been quietly floating in her dantian seemed to be summoned by some kind of power and was ready to move. Fortunately, Chu Luiyue was already prepared. She took the initiative and forcefully restrained the force around her body, stopping the flow. The fluctuation that was about to rise was forcefully suppressed just like that. Her hand smoothly reached out to the water-like mirror. Then, she took a step forward and passed smoothly. The whole process only took a few breaths. From the beginning to the end, Chu Luiyue's expression did not change at all. She was as calm as ever. No one knew what she had experienced in that moment. Rong Xiu reached out his hand to her. Chu Luiyue then realized that her palms were drenched in sweat when Chu Luiyue's warm and dry hands held them. Rong Xiu's fingertips gently rubbed the back of her hand. Chu Luiyue's heart finally calmed down. She looked at the bronze mirror with a complicated gaze. There was a very strange power hidden inside. When she passed by, she could clearly feel that someone was observing her. That feeling sent a chill down her spine. However, it was clear that the people in the surroundings did not notice anything amiss. Those who passed were excited and happy. Those who failed were lonely and regretful. Chu Luiyue's eyes drooped slightly as she thought to herself. Little Boat should have felt the existence of that strange power before. That's why, Brother Bailey, I heard that the Heavenly Yin Mountain is very dangerous. Let's go up together so that we can take care of each other. How about it? Ziji was clearly waiting here for this plan. Although Xiaolan was somewhat dissatisfied, seeing that Rong Xiu and Bai Li had successfully passed the examination, she could not say anything more. Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue looked at each other for a moment. Okay. After discussing, they headed up the mountain together. They were not slow and quickly entered the forest. After walking for a distance, Chu Luiyue turned around to take a look. Through the dense forest, she could still vaguely see the scene in the bronze mirror. When she turned back, Little Boat just happened to raise his leg and smoothly passed through the bronze mirror. Everything looked no different from the others. However, he did not team up with anyone and continued to be alone. After standing still for a moment, he chose to go up the mountain alone. Chu Luiyue retracted her gaze. A quarter of an hour passed quickly. Chu Luiyue and the others walked in the forest, but did not encounter any problems. The wind blew through the forest, making rustling sounds. This place doesn't seem to be as dangerous as the legends say. Xiaolan muttered in a low voice. She had been nervous for so long. We just came in. Whether there is danger or not, we will know later. Ziji's expression was very serious. Young Master you said before that the duration of this trial is a month. Chu Luiyue suddenly asked. Although this Heavenly Yin Mountain is tall and steep, it shouldn't take that long to climb to the top, right? Even an ordinary person without any cultivation base would finish climbing in 2 or 3 days. If it was a cultivator, it would only be faster. Even if there were some traps and dangers in the middle, a month's time was indeed a bit long. Ziji said, because this is only half of the trial. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. Actually, you are right. Generally speaking, it only takes a few days to reach the top of the mountain. And the order of climbing to the top of the mountain also determines the ranking of the trial. But after that, everyone will have to stay at the top of the mountain for a while until a month later, the gatekeeper will bring people to the Divine Ruins world. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1997. Oh. Why is that so? Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows slightly. Since the ranking of the trial will be out once we reach the top of the mountain, why should we wait here for another month? If they really wanted to bring people to the divine ruins world, they could just go directly. Why go through so much trouble? Ziji was stunned for a moment. Because this is the rule that was set from the beginning, there was no reason. From the moment they knew of the existence of this trial, the rules had already been set. This was like something that had been set by convention. No one would break the casserole and ask about it. If the gatekeeper said so, then they would do so. It was that simple. Previously, Ziji had not thought about this question. Hearing Chu Liuyue's question, he was a little puzzled. But he could not figure it out. After thinking about it and not getting an answer, Ziji scratched his head. This, probably because so many people are going to pass through the gate world, so they have to make more preparations. Chu Liyue and Rongxiu both came from the divine ruins world. Naturally, they knew that this guess was impossible. If that was the case, then this matter was even more problematic. Suddenly, a scream was heard, breaking the silence. The few of them looked back and saw a few people running towards them in a panic. All of them looked panicked and had blood on their bodies. It was obvious that they had just gone through a fierce battle. Roar! Behind them, a gray-winged demon wolf was rapidly approaching. The forest was dense and it could not move freely. However, as a 9th-grade demon beast, its speed was still very shocking. Those people were being chased by it until they were in a sorry state. Save us! I beg you! The youth running at the front shouted in panic. Xilan pulled Ziji's sleeve. Big brother, we are in a competition. How can we help others? If they were close to their own people, then so be it. But these people were strangers to them. Why should they save them? What's more, they brought the danger to us. Ziji nodded. Although he had always been warm-hearted, he also knew that he had to act appropriately. He did not want to lose his life because of this. Let's go. Ziji growled and turned around without hesitation. Chu Liyue and Rongxiu naturally did not want to interfere. They had already made up their minds. They wouldn't attack if they could. As long as they could reach the top of the mountain, they would be able to find out what they were up to. Seeing these people turn around and leave without any intention of helping, despair flashed in the eyes of those people. In this trial, there was a tacit rule: once you participate in the trial, life or death doesn't matter. If he died here, he would have died in vain. Despite the dangers, there were still countless cultivators who rushed forward. Because in this world, the strong were still respected. She walked straight to the gray-winged demon wolf's side and bent down to pull out the dagger. The bright and sharp dagger was not stained with the slightest bit of blood. She turned her gaze and looked at the gray-winged demonic wolf. Not getting a response, the few people were a little embarrassed. However, thinking that their lives had been saved by her, they were still very grateful in their hearts. May I know your names? In the future, you can go down the mountain. Chu Liyue straightened her body and said indifferently. What? The few people were all stunned and looked at each other. This meant, to let them withdraw from the trial. That's right, if she did not make a move, they would not be able to continue participating in the trial. Moreover, with their current state, they probably would not be able to win. Then, the youth in the lead hesitantly opened his mouth, wanting to inquire about Chu Liyue's identity so that he could repay her in the future. Chu Liyue just lazily waved her hand. No need to thank me. I did not intend to save you. These words made it impossible for them to respond. Seeing that Chu Liyue did not seem to want to say anything more to them, the few people did not continue to pester her. After solemnly thanking her again, they went down the mountain. The figures of the few people quickly disappeared. Ziji and Xilan looked at each other, both puzzled. If she wanted those people to withdraw from the trial to reduce a few opponents for herself, it did not seem to make sense. With her strength, she obviously would not put these people in her eyes. Chu Liuyue's eyes drooped slightly. Looking at the faint mark on the gray-winged demon wolf's neck, she seemed to be in deep thought. This gray-winged demon wolf had an owner. Digression, 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1998. More importantly, it seemed to be the kind that had been specially tamed, and there were some subtle differences between it and ordinary contracted magical beasts. The wound on the gray-winged demonic wolf's neck had already healed, and it was covered very well by its hair. If one didn't look closely, they wouldn't notice it at all. Judging from the state of the scar, it should be quite deep. This gray-winged demonic wolf must have suffered a lot. Outside the Divine Ruins world, if one could contract a 9th-grade magical beast, they would be overjoyed. Who would be so ruthless? Unless the other party didn't put this 9th-grade gray-winged demonic wolf in their eyes at all. Hiziji and Hizailan looked at each other strangely. They didn't understand why Chu Luyue and Hizailan kept staring at the corpse of the gray-winged demonic wolf. But when they thought of the strength she had just displayed, the waves in their hearts still couldn't calm down. She should have her own reasons for doing so. It seems that this heavenly Yin mountain is indeed not very peaceful. The corner of Rong Xiu's mouth raised slightly as he smiled faintly. Chu Luyue glanced at him and knew that the two of them were thinking of the same thing. She nodded and smiled as well. That's right. But this trip is quite worth it. She looked in the direction of the mountain peak. Let's go. I wonder what other surprises are waiting for us up there. The few of them continued to walk towards the top of the mountain. Probably because she still had lingering fear from the scene just now, Hizailan didn't dare to be presumptuous anymore. She ran to Hiziji's side and followed without a word. From time to time, she would look at Chu Luyue. Her eyes were filled with curiosity and inquiry, as well as a trace of envy and jealousy. This woman looked to be less than 20 years old. Her entire body was ordinary and there was nothing eye-catching about her. But who would have thought that her strength would be so powerful when she made a move? With this level, she would probably be able to get into the top few in this trial. As for her husband, although he hadn't made a move until now, Hizailan didn't dare to underestimate them anymore. Without Hizailan's noise, the surroundings instantly became much quieter. Hiziji wanted to ask a few questions, but in the end, he chose to give up. The two of them were likely stronger than he had expected. The few of them walked in silence. Probably because Chu Liuyue's body carried the bloody smell of the gray-winged demon wolf, which was quite intimidating, they didn't encounter any trouble in the next hour. Chi! A piercing sound was heard all of a sudden. They all stopped at the same time. Hiziji was the first to raise his guard. Who? A moment later, a figure appeared in their line of sight. Chu Luyue calmed down. Small boat. His speed was extremely fast and his movements were nimble. After a few leaps in the forest, he was already not far away from them. Then, he stopped on top of a tree and looked up at the few of them. Hiziji and his sister immediately became nervous. It's you. Wasn't this the young man who was hesitating in front of the bronze mirror? He was born extremely beautiful and delicate, with a head of soft golden short hair that was unforgettable. They had a deep impression of him, so they recognized him the moment they saw him. What do you want to do? Hiziji sensed a strong bloody smell on the young man's body, and his brows furrowed. However, Small Boat didn't pay attention to him. He only glanced at him indifferently, then turned around and broke off a branch that was as thick as a thumb, and threw it out. Immediately after, a painful and short cry came from not far away. Hiziji and Hizailan's expressions changed. This was a human's voice. Was he killing someone? However, after a short moment of shock, they quickly accepted this fact. Because in this trial of the heavenly mountain, life and death didn't matter. Competition and even killing each other was allowed. Once you died here, you couldn't blame anyone else. If you wanted to blame someone, you could only blame yourself for not being strong enough. But, just by throwing out a branch, he ended a cultivator's life. This kind of strength really couldn't be underestimated. Small Boat turned around and looked over. Just when Zg thought that he was going to come over, he retracted his gaze and quickly left with a few leaps. That thin and frail figure soon disappeared into the forest. He left just like that. Xilan let out a long breath. I thought he was going to come over and fight us. Zg's hanging heart also relaxed. We have more people, he shouldn't dare to act rashly. As he spoke, he glanced at Chu Luyue and Rong Xiao beside him. For some reason, he had a faint feeling that the reason why the young man didn't come over was because of these two people. Was it because of some kind of fear? But no matter what, they had avoided trouble. That young man's strength was clearly above theirs. Thinking of this, Zg felt bitter in his mouth. He had long heard that those who came to Cloud State City to participate in the trial were all top geniuses, all of them extraordinary. But he didn't expect that the few he met were all stronger than him. Originally, he was still quite confident in himself. Now, the trial had only started for a short while, and his self-confidence was almost shattered. This small episode didn't seem to have any effect on them. After Small Boat left, they quickly continued forward. On the way, they met with a few more troubles, but to Chu Luyue and Rong Xiao, it was nothing. The two of them didn't even do much, leaving most of the work to Zg and his sister. The talent and strength of these two siblings were actually not bad. If they weren't compared to Chu Luyue and his sister. Of course, this comparison was very hooligan. During this process, Chu Luyue's thoughts were more focused on the magical beasts that appeared in the forest. Later on, they met two 9th-grade magical beasts. Without exception, their bodies were also covered with similar wounds as the gray-winged demonic wolf. Obviously, these were magical beasts that someone had reared and deliberately released at this time. As for the purpose, it was clear as day. It was nothing more than a quick screening of the people participating in the trial. 2 days passed quickly. On the morning of the third day, a clear and melodious whistle came from the top of the mountain. Chu Luyue looked up. At this time, they were already 2/3 of the way up the mountain, barely able to see the figure of Hong'an hanging in the air above the mountain. These few days, he had been there, monitoring the progress of the entire competition. Looks like someone has already reached the top. Rong Xiao raised his eyebrows and said softly. Zg and his sister both looked disappointed. It was a pity that they didn't get first place. Zg thought for a while, and finally couldn't help but ask. Brother Bailey, you clearly have a chance to get first place. Why, mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Asked Chu Luyue in a seemingly nonchalant manner. Is there something wrong? Hong'an chuckled. No. I just feel that 17 years old really has a limitless future. Chu Luyue smiled faintly, as if she believed his words. By the way, there's still some time before the end. You guys can rest on the side first. Hong'an's attitude was obviously better than before. And this was only because he heard that Chu Luyue was younger than expected. 17 years old, she was currently the youngest one here. Chu Luyue lowered her eyes to hide the ripples in her eyes. She responded softly and retreated. Many people around them looked at them. Chu Luyue pretended not to see them. After retreating to the side, she began to wait quietly. Another 4 hours passed, and it was noon. People came up one after another. When the 50th person arrived, Hong'an finally put away the booklet in his hand. At the same time, he blew the whistle again. This whistle meant that those who had yet to arrive had all been eliminated. Some of them were only a short distance away from the top of the mountain. After hearing the whistle, they were all shocked and annoyed. However, the outcome was already decided, and no one could change it. After wandering around for a while, these people finally returned. The people who stayed at the top of the mountain were naturally overjoyed. Passing the trial meant that they could enter the divine ruins world. After confirming that no one else came to disturb them, Hong'an looked at the people in front of him. He had an appreciative smile on his face. First of all, congratulations to everyone for passing the trial. This also means that you are one step closer to the higher level. With just a few words, many people's hearts were surging. The excitement on their faces were even more than when they were at the foot of the mountain. However, everyone should know that after this, we still need to wait here for a month before we can go to the divine ruins world. During this period of time, everyone would be able to rest and recuperate. They could also continue to train. After a month, we will set off. There was no problem with this. Everyone was very happy when they heard this. So the reason we stayed here during this period of time was to let us adjust our condition to the best of our ability. Ziji revealed a look of relief. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Chu Luiyue smiled. If only it was that simple. But unfortunately, this Hong'an really didn't have any good intentions. Most of them were indeed injured, but they weren't very serious. With such injuries, a few days would be enough to completely recuperate. Why would it take a month? Chu Luiyue found a seat at the edge and sat cross-legged. Rongxiu took the opportunity to sit beside her. The others also found their own places to stay, planning to wait for this month. Xiao Zhou didn't come over to greet Chu Luiyue and the others. Instead, he sat alone on the right side of Chu Luiyue. As long as they looked up, they would be able to see each other. The top of the lunar mountain seemed to have been cut off by something. It was very flat and wide. It was more than enough to accommodate the 50 of them. Everyone sat down separately. After exchanging a few pleasantries, they all quieted down. Some people began to try to heal their injuries. Some were absorbing the energy of heaven and earth to cultivate. In short, everything looked normal. After Hong'an finished counting the number of people, he rose into the air again and hovered in midair. Chu Luiyue raised her eyes and took a look. Why did he go up again at this time? She kept feeling that this kind of attitude was a little arrogant and strange. It even made her feel like she was being watched. Chu Luiyue finally suppressed the thoughts in her heart and gently closed her eyes. Time passed silently, and the mountain wind blew. Dusk fell, and the full moon hung high in the sky. A trace of coldness swept over. Chu Luiyue suddenly opened her eyes. The force in her body was quietly flowing away. Digression: there are 2 more updates at 8:00 mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 2000. This feeling was very subtle. If she didn't have the Tianjin Yuan meridian and was extremely sensitive to the force, she wouldn't have noticed that something was wrong so quickly. She subconsciously moved and wanted to get up. Rongxiu's voice suddenly came and fell clearly into her ears. Chu Luiyue immediately restrained herself. At this time, it was indeed not a good time to act rashly and alert the enemy. She looked around without batting an eyelid. It was quiet all around. Everyone was in their positions and didn't seem to be wrong. Most of them probably hadn't noticed that their strength was flowing away. After looking around, Chu Luiyue retracted her gaze and looked at the ground in front of her. The flat and rough mountain rock was grayish-white. Under the moonlight, it reflected a few faint phosphorescent lights. The light didn't seem to be abnormal. However, the force that had flowed out of her body earlier had flowed into the mountain rock below her. There was obviously something below. After thinking for a moment, Chu Luyue bent her fingers slightly and then flicked gently. "Ah!" He Xilan suddenly exclaimed and jumped up. "Who hit me?" The scream was heard and immediately woke up everyone present. Everyone turned to look at them. Everything was going well, so it was hard for anyone not to be startled by this sudden change. Hongan was resting with his eyes closed. When he heard the noise, he immediately opened his eyes. He frowned. "What's wrong?" Everything was going well. Who knew that it would be interrupted like this? He was in a bad mood. Naturally, his expression wasn't any better. Hearing his majestic voice, He Xilan immediately became nervous and her voice became much softer. I. Someone just attacked me. Who attacked you?" Hongan looked around. Everyone was in their respective positions. Attack? It didn't seem right. Yes. I don't know. He Xilan was cultivating when she suddenly felt a pain in her back. She was shocked and subconsciously thought that someone had attacked her. When Hongan asked, she answered without thinking. But now that she had calmed down, she felt that something was wrong. She had no grievances with the people here. Who would attack her? Moreover, it was in front of so many people. Most importantly, she couldn't tell where the force came from. In this case, it would be difficult for her to identify. There was a hint of impatience on Hongan's face. He Xilan became more timid and panicked for a moment. I don't know. Hongan's expression became worse. He Xilan was afraid that he would blame her and quickly said, but I'm really injured. Lord Hongan. Hongan narrowed his eyes. Where are you injured? He Xilan blushed and murmured, I hurt my back. After all, she was still a young girl. She was still a little embarrassed to say this in front of so many people. But there was no way to check her back. She couldn't possibly zest no one to be sure. Hongan examined, feel injured even if she to injury to everyone's eyes were focused on He Xilan, making her feel uneasy. It's fine, it hurts so much that it was probably purple. But it really wasn't much of an injury. It seemed like she was making a mountain out of a molehill and deliberately stirring up trouble, Hongan said in a deep voice. Since you're fine, just stay here. Even if you don't want to cultivate, don't hold up the others. His words were a little harsh. He Xilan bit her lip, feeling wronged. Yes. He Ziji hurriedly said, Lord Hongan, please don't be angry. My sister has been spoiled by the family. She gets flustered easily, but she doesn't have any bad intentions. Don't worry, I'll teach her a lesson. I won't do it again. Hongan glanced at him. Remember what you said. If you can't stay here, you can leave. You should know that even if you've passed the trial, you may not be suitable to enter the Divine Ruins world. In the past, there were people who were eliminated in this 1 month. His words were full of warning and threat, which immediately alerted everyone present. He Ziji also broke out in cold sweat. Yes. As he spoke, he hurriedly pulled He Xilan to sit down. The farce seemed to have come to an end just like that. Chu Luyue turned his head slightly and asked softly, just now. What happened? He Xilan was feeling wronged, but when she heard Chu Luyue's question, she couldn't hold it in anymore. Someone really attacked me just now. He injured me. He Ziji shouted in a low voice, Xilan. Don't say any more. Don't you think you've caused enough trouble? It wasn't easy for them to pass the trial. They couldn't let their efforts go to waste and be chased down the mountain. When He Xilan was yelled at by him, the grievance in her heart exploded. She couldn't help but cry and sob. Even Big Brother didn't believe her. Chu Luyue blinked his eyes, and his voice became even softer. From the looks of it, she doesn't seem to be lying. But everyone stayed in their own positions. Who could have attacked you? Xilan didn't expect Chu Luiyue to speak up for her. She immediately felt grateful in her heart. She clenched her fists, gritted her teeth, and said hatefully, "Who knows what's going on? I think, maybe there's a problem with the heavenly Yin mountain." Digression. Chapter 2001. Xilan. Ziji's heart skipped a beat as he hurriedly covered her mouth. What nonsense are you talking about? How could such words be said so casually? Xilan blurted out those words and immediately regretted it. She hurriedly looked at Hong'an. However, Hong'an had already closed his eyes and seemed to be deep in thought. He did not care about the situation here. After confirming that he had no intention of continuing to pursue the matter, Ziji heaved a sigh of relief. His entire back was soaked in cold sweat. Xilan's tears fell on the back of his hand, making him angry and distressed. However, he could not vent his anger. "Xilan, this is not home. You can't be willful. You must be careful with your words and actions in the future, understand?" Xilan nodded while crying. At this moment, she also realized the seriousness of the matter. Chu Luiyue smiled and said gently, "Yes. This is the heavenly Yin mountain. How could there be a problem? It must be a misunderstanding." Ziji looked at her gratefully. He originally thought that this woman's temperament was a little cold, but he did not expect her to speak up for him at this time. "Thank you. No need. It was fine as long as everyone was safe and sound." After Chu Luiyue finished speaking, he did not say anything else. Everything seemed to have returned to normal. However, Xilan's words just now were heard by many people around. Some people secretly exchanged glances, and all of them were suspicious and uneasy. Looking at Xilan's appearance, it did not seem like she was lying. After all, creating such rumors would not benefit her in any way. Why did she have to be so thankless? However, her situation was indeed a little strange. If these people present did not make a move, then who else could it be? This heavenly Yin mountain. Was there really a problem? On the surface, this farce had indeed subsided, but in many people's hearts, the seeds of doubt were planted. First, it was Xilan. Who knew if this kind of thing would happen in the future, and whose turn it would be? Who knew, they might even be more heavy-handed, their minds were in a mess, and they did not have the mood to heal or cultivate. An inexplicable sense of unwillingness and anxiety quietly surged among the people at the top of the mountain. Hong'an frowned. He finally opened his eyes and looked down. With such a ruckus, all their previous preparations had been wasted. His heart was filled with anger, but he couldn't vent it. These people were not stupid. Once they realized that something was wrong, they would definitely react quickly. Therefore, he had to be more careful. Even if they were delayed, they could only accept it. At most, he could just make up for it later. After convincing himself like this, Hong'an's mood finally calmed down. However, this peace did not last for long. 2 hours later, the same thing happened once again. However, this time, the one who was ambushed was a young man around the age of 20. His shoulder blade had been cracked. Moreover, he didn't know who did it. The first time, it might have been a misunderstanding, but this time, there was no way to explain it. Furthermore, his injuries this time were more serious than before. Everyone's heart sank when they saw the young man sitting on the ground with a pained expression on his face. What's going on? Once, twice. Would there be a third time, or even more? Who can say for sure? If it's even more brutal in the future, I'm afraid his injuries will become more and more serious, or even, could it be that there's really something fishy about the heavenly Yin mountain? Everyone discussed animatedly, and many people already wanted to investigate the heavenly Yin mountain. Hong An's suppressed anger surged in his chest. There's nothing wrong with the heavenly Yin mountain. Someone is definitely messing with us. After this happened, he couldn't continue to stay high and mighty, so he could only return to the top of the mountain. He walked to the young man's side and personally examined him, but he didn't find anything. This made Hong An's head hurt even more. In fact, he had been paying close attention to the situation at the top of the mountain. However, he didn't notice how this happened at all. It was as if the strength of the sneak attack had suddenly appeared out of thin air. But this was too strange. If the people present did anything, they definitely wouldn't be able to escape his eyes. But he didn't notice anything. Hong An asked the people beside him to bandage the young man's wounds. The surroundings were silent. After this happened twice in a row, everyone was very uneasy. He Xilan couldn't help but whisper. "Big brother, I already said that there's something wrong with this place. I'm really not talking nonsense, look at this. What if this was just the beginning? Who knew what would happen next?" Ziji frowned and looked at her, indicating for her to stop talking. But even if Xilan didn't say it, everyone present already had the same thought in their hearts. Hong An stood up, thought for a moment, and waved his sleeve. A huge red barrier immediately enveloped everyone. "Alright, don't make wild guesses. Now that I've set up a barrier, the same thing won't happen again. You guys can continue to rest in peace," Hong An said in a deep voice. However, at this time, these words clearly had no effect. Everyone was still standing in place, not daring to sit down, rest, or cultivate. They felt that it wasn't safe. Rong Xiu suddenly said, "This brother is injured and shouldn't be able to stay any longer. Should we send him down the mountain?" His voice was clear and indifferent, but it instantly reminded everyone. That's right. His shoulder blade was cracked, and it had a huge impact. In this situation, Hong An actually didn't mention letting him leave from the beginning to the end. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Dragging a sick body to the divine ruins world, wasn't that courting death? Hong An's brows were also furrowed, and a fire burned wildly in his heart. How could this be? He had been waiting by the side and guarding very carefully. If these people did anything, he would definitely be the first to notice. But now, things had happened just like that, and he had not noticed at all. The surroundings were silent. Everyone's gaze moved back and forth between Hong An and the youth with different expressions. Hong An felt like there was a blade on his back. There could be one or two, but not three. The same thing was happening again, and each time it was more serious than the last. It was obvious that the people present were already wavering. It was definitely impossible to use the previous excuse to fool them. The youth hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, "Lord Hong An, I want to bring third brother down the mountain. His injuries can't be delayed." The youth immediately dissuaded him. "Second brother. I can go down by myself, don't delay you, how can you do it by yourself like this?" The youth interrupted him, not allowing him to say anything. Although it was a pity to give up this opportunity, his third brother's life was more important. Hong An took a deep breath, as if he had made a decision. "You don't have to leave. I'll bring you to a place to recuperate." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2003. The moment these words were spoken, everyone was taken aback. Hong An stood up and waved his sleeves. The surrounding red barrier instantly dissipated. Immediately after, a wooden tablet flew out of his hand. Buzz! Following the buzzing sound, a huge silver barrier appeared before everyone's eyes. A powerful aura continued to spread out from above. Everyone on the top of the mountain was stunned by this scene. Their faces were filled with astonishment and shock. Chu Liuyue's eyes lit up. It's here. Behind this barrier is a small, independent space. It is also the closest existence to the divine ruins world, which is only a single gate away from it. Only by passing through this barrier and entering can you truly see the door realm and step into the divine ruins world. Originally, this barrier should only open after a month, but since you don't want to stay here anymore, why don't you go ahead of time? With just a few words, everyone's hearts surged. This heavenly mountain was quite strange. Strange things happened frequently, and they couldn't stay any longer. If they could enter ahead of time, it would naturally be best. Hong'an looked at the two brothers. In that small space, the energy of heaven and earth is abundant, and there are many heavenly materials and earthly treasures. After you go, you can take good care of yourself. When your body recovers, you can leave at any time. Of course, if you still want to go to the divine ruins world at that time, you still have the opportunity. Thank you, Lord Hong'an. When the two brothers heard this, they immediately became excited and happy, thanking him repeatedly. There was no better result than this. Hong'an waved his hand. In fact, he was very annoyed. He should have brought these people here for a month, but only 2 days had passed. He didn't get anything, and he had to send them in. He had really suffered a huge loss this time. But in the current situation, there was really no better solution. If he suffered a loss, so be it, as long as it didn't affect the overall situation. Moreover, there were a few good people in this batch. In the end, there might even be a reward. Thinking of this, his mood finally became a little better. He took the lead and flew in front of the silver barrier. Now, everyone, line up and enter in order. Almost immediately, someone stepped forward. I'll go first. Such a great opportunity was really tempting to them. Who didn't want to be first? Who didn't want to become stronger? In the face of huge benefits and temptations, almost no one could remain rational. Apart from Hong'an, there were only 50 people here. The process progressed very quickly. In just a short while, a third of them had already entered. The young man supported his younger brother and followed in. Everyone could see the excitement on their faces. Rong Xiu chuckled. Even after suffering such serious injuries, you still refuse to give up. You're really amazing. Chapter 2005. No one moved. At this point, if they still couldn't see the problem, they would really be stupid. Lord Hong'an, where exactly is this place? Who is your so-called master? Someone boldly asked. Everyone's eyes were focused on Hong'an. He chuckled. Where is this place? Don't all of you see it clearly? This is a small space that is close to the divine ruins world. As for the master, it's naturally the master. I've never said that I'm a rogue cultivator, right? Seeing that everyone was on alert, he secretly cursed Scarface in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. To be honest, we were originally a force in the divine ruins world. However, we are only a branch here. Regarding the trial, to be honest, we have our own selfish motives. Our goal is to attract everyone here. After all, everyone present is a top genius. If you can join us, it will definitely be like adding wings to a tiger. Hearing this, the expressions of many people present eased a lot. So he wanted to recruit people. If that was the case, it wasn't difficult to understand. However, if that's the case, Lord Hong'an can explain it in advance. Why? Why was there a need to be so secretive and almost cause a misunderstanding? Hong'an smiled. You may not know, but the divine ruins world has its own rules. It's not appropriate to recruit people from outside, so we naturally can't make a big fuss. I originally wanted to bring you in and count you as a member of the Divine Ruins world before recruiting. I didn't expect that I didn't make this clear and almost caused a misunderstanding. His attitude was very sincere, and his tone was calm and patient. Many people immediately chose to believe him. After all, no matter what, his strength was here. Moreover, the heaven and earth energy here was abundant, and it was indeed a good place to cultivate. Why would such a powerful existence deceive them? Of course, if you don't like it, you can choose other sects after entering the Divine Ruins world. We won't stop you. Chu Luiyue sneered in his heart. What a nice way to put it. These people had never been to the Divine Ruins world, so they knew nothing about the situation there. In fact, the Divine Ruins world was vast, and the major families and sects were all separated by a great distance. If he were to go there rashly, he would probably die on the streets before he could even figure out what was going on. If that was the case, anyone who had some understanding of the Divine Ruins world would know how absurd and laughable it was. However, if the people present knew about this, they wouldn't have participated in this so-called trial in the first place. So that's how it is. It seems that we have misunderstood you. The person who raised the question first apologized profusely. The attitude of the remaining people also changed. The never-before-seen cultivation ground and the continuous appearance of high gods were very confusing. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2007. Following that, the heavenly lightning bolts bombarded every location on the mountain peak. In a short while, the originally handsome and tall mountain peak had become unrecognizable. Ravines crisscrossed, and forests collapsed. Shrill and panicked screams came from everywhere, and messy bloodstains covered the mountains and wilderness. Some people were lying on the ground, gradually losing their breath. However, their blood was still rapidly flowing out, soaking into the ground. Chu Luiyue looked again, and her pupils suddenly shrank. She saw that those people's bodies were shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. In an instant, Chu Luiyue finally understood something. This was to completely devour the last bit of power in their bodies. No wonder. No wonder the people of Black Demon Cave would hold a so-called trial here, using the Divine Ruins world as bait to deceive all these cultivators. Moreover, they wanted young geniuses. The essence and power seized like this was naturally the most abundant. She had long known that Black Demon Cave's cultivation method was very evil, but now that she saw it, it was 100 times more evil and sinister than she had expected. Not only that, even those people in the Peach Blossom Dock had probably suffered the same torture. She didn't know how long Black Demon Cave had been doing this, and she didn't know how many innocent people had died at their hands. Tianlei continued to fall, and the entire mountain peak was quickly covered by a white light. From the gaps in the flickering light, one could vaguely see the scene of people fleeing in panic. Painful wails could be heard incessantly. Hong'an looked down at this scene from above, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. Hong'an, you're just going to act like this? The commotion here quickly attracted the attention of others. Someone flew up from a nearby mountain peak and looked over in their direction. Hong'an crossed his arms and snorted. Among these people, there are a few who don't know what's good for them. The sooner we deal with them, the better. That person nodded in understanding, and then said with some regret. That's a pity. If you can let these people stay in Heavenly Een Mountain for a month, you can get a lot of commission. Maybe, you can take the opportunity to refine a divine body. You have to know that such an opportunity doesn't come by often. If you miss this opportunity, who knows how long you'll have to wait for the next one. Upon hearing this, Hong'an's face darkened. This person was right. In the entire sect, the only exit was the Cloud State City. Every once in a while, they would use the Divine Ruins world as an excuse to hold trials outside to attract all kinds of genius cultivators. Every time a trial was held, a different person would be in charge of it. They were the so-called gatekeepers. According to the rules, the cultivators who passed the trial would stay on Heavenly Een Mountain for a month. And during this 1 month, they had set up a Xian formation on Lunar Mountain in advance, which would take the opportunity to devour these people's origin power. After the matter was completed, the gatekeeper would receive a portion of the power as a reward. The more power they devoured, the more benefits the gatekeeper would receive. One had to know that this energy was formed by gathering the origin power of the most talented cultivators. It was extremely pure and precious. If he could get such an opportunity, he might be able to save years or even decades of cultivation time. Who wouldn't want such a good thing? Every time, the entire sect would engage in an intense competition for this spot. Hong'an had spent a lot of effort and thought to get this opportunity. Who knew that it would be wasted just like that? Once they entered the barrier, these people would have to bear the bombardment of Tianlai. Although this could further devour their power, in the process, they would lose a lot of their own power. And the gatekeeper would not be able to get a commission. But the most important thing was that his master valued this very much. If his master knew what he had done, he would definitely be punished. The only thing that made Hong'an slightly relieved was that there were a few outstanding people in this group. With the existence of those people, perhaps they could make up for the previous losses and make his master less angry. Hong'an held his breath. Such a good opportunity had been wasted. Not to mention a commission, he would thank the heavens if he could escape punishment this time. He didn't know what had happened on Heavenly Een Mountain, right? This matter had to be reported as soon as possible. Thinking of this, Hong'an said to that person, "Since you have nothing to do now, help me watch for a while. I'll go and report to my master about the situation on Heavenly Een Mountain." That person had a good relationship with him, so he agreed. His figure moved and quickly came to Hong'an's side. "Then go and come back quickly." Hong'an nodded and was about to turn and leave. However, just as he took a step, he heard a strange sound coming from the mountain below. Almost at the same time, the people standing next to him gasped in shock. How could this be? Hong'an hurriedly turned his head to look. How? His voice seemed to be suddenly cut off by something, and he stopped abruptly. On the mountain below, under the flickering lightning, a thin figure was faintly discernible. He held a sword in his hand and raised it high above his head. As for the lightning bolts that were descending, they were all swallowed up by the sword. Countless streams of light swam around the thick and deep sword, almost dyeing it into a dazzling snowy color. However, the terrifying power of Tianlai was indeed quickly annihilated by it. Chapter 2008. The heavy and majestic longsword suddenly fell. Wherever the sword chi went, the void was torn apart. The violent spatial turbulence raged and surged. Following that, a huge cracking sound came from the mountain. Boom! A ravine spread across the mountain. The huge mountain peak was instantly split into two by this sword. All the Tianlai power was affected by the impact and was swept away in an instant. In the blink of an eye, the mountain was split in half. Many cultivators stood on one side, while the violent Tianlai power gathered on the other side and raged wildly. Half of the mountain began to be destroyed and collapsed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Rumble. For a moment, the mountain rocks rolled down and dust flew. It was a complete mess all over the mountains and plains. Hong'an was stunned. The scene in front of him was so beyond his expectations that he stood there for a long time, unable to react. However, the person next to him suddenly realized something. No! Isn't he a stage 9 martial artist? How can he unleash such shocking power? Looking at his cultivation level, he was indeed not a god-level powerhouse. However, the strength he displayed now was already more powerful than many god-level martial artists. Hong'an's lips trembled. I don't know, back then, He felt that the golden-haired young man's talent and strength were very outstanding, so he gave him a second chance. Who would have thought that he would end up in such a big mess? Looking at the destroyed half of the mountain, Hong An's blood froze, and he felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. This time, it was really a big mess. If his master pursued this matter, he was afraid that, no, it's fine. It's definitely fine. Hong An took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. Even if he's really a god-level powerhouse, he's definitely not a match for Tianlei. He did not believe that this person could really cause any trouble. As expected, the Tianlei in the sky seemed to have sensed something and quickly began to gather again. Chu Luiyue stood behind the crowd and looked at the thin and tall figure in front of her. She lightly sighed, and her lips curved up into a smile. That's amazing. After not seeing each other for such a long time, Little Boat's strength had already made an extremely shocking leap. Yes, he had yet to break through the threshold of becoming a high god. However, the power stored in his body was comparable to that of a high deity. Although the Cloud Sky Copper Sword was not a peak divine artifact, it was something that Chu Luiyue had spent a great deal of effort to refine. Swords had spirits. In Xiao Zhou's hands, this sword could unleash its greatest power. Everyone looked at the small boat gratefully. Clearly, his attack had saved many lives. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. He was the one who beat me to it. This explanation seemed to make sense. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes. Those Tianlei are not afraid of that sword, but you. Digression, Tianlei, meow meow meow. I'll be back at 6 mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2009. Just as he finished speaking, there was a loud bang. The Cloud Sky Copper Sword had already devoured all the Tianlei. As Xiao Zhou's sword slashed down, the energy poured out like a torrent. However, the power of the heavenly lightning that was originally aimed at them had all turned into sword chi and was heading towards the collapsed half of the cliff. The mountain rocks turned into dust, and the space was torn apart crazily. The wind howled, and for a moment, the clouds and thunder moved. Even the boundary outside the mountain started to shake violently. It was about to break. Xiao Zhou's sword also dealt a heavy blow to Hong An's heart. Looking at the half of the cliff that was almost completely destroyed, Hong An's body stiffened, and he almost couldn't believe his eyes. He had never thought that a ranked 9 warrior could actually unleash such strength. He asked himself, and even he himself might not be able to withstand the Tianlei. What the hell, this was really what the hell. Thinking about it carefully, this youth was not right from the start of the trial. Hong An was filled with regret. If he knew that this youth could cause so much trouble, he would definitely not have let him in. But now that things had turned out like this, how should he clean up? Hong An. Hong An. The person beside him shouted a few times. What are you still standing there for? Quickly go and report to Master. This anxious voice finally made Hong An come back to his senses. Immediately, his face turned ghastly pale. He was all too clear that if this scene was seen by Master, what kind of terrifying punishment would he face? One must know that there was a Xian formation that they had painstakingly set up on the mountain peak. Now, it was all destroyed. Now that things had turned out like this, it couldn't be concealed no matter what. Hong An took a deep breath and reluctantly responded. Got it. You stay here and stabilize them first. I'll be back soon. However, before he could do anything, a figure had already flown over from afar. What's going on? The cold and solemn old voice was filled with majesty. The person who came was a black-robed old man with a head full of silver hair and wrinkles. One of his eyes was deeply sunken in, and his entire body emitted a cold and powerful pressure. When Hong'an and Xiao Zhou saw the person who came, they were shocked and hurriedly said, "Greetings to Hall Master Do Min." Do Min ignored them. She walked past them and came to the front of the mountain. She quickly took in the scene in front of her. When he saw half of the collapsed mountain, his face turned even colder. "Hong'an, is this what you've done?" His voice sounded exceptionally hoarse and cold. "First, you brought them back in advance, and then you allowed them to do such a thing. Hong'an, how many lives do you have to pay for the losses you've caused this time?" He was standing closest to the Xian formation, so he received the greatest impact. This time, he was almost half dead. Chu Liuyue's heart tightened. He was about to make a move but was stopped by Rongxiu. "Wait." Chu Liyue was anxious. He couldn't just watch as Xiao Zhou was beaten to death, right? Just as she was about to say something, she noticed that Rongxiu was frowning and looking in a certain direction. Her heart skipped a beat, and she followed his gaze. In the distance, a powerful and unparalleled pressure suddenly descended. Her heart seemed to be clenched tightly by something. This aura, so noisy. A hoarse and low voice seemed to have passed through a long time and space and came from afar. The voice was calm and casual, but it carried supreme majesty. Mo Shiqian. He was actually here. Digression, Kawanzhong, 7 o'clock. Sorry for the kissing. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2011. So far, Chu Liyue had never really seen Mo Shiqian. Although they had confronted each other several times, Mo Shiqian had never shown his face. Chu Liyue even heard his name from Rongxiu. However, the moment she heard this voice, Chu Liyue knew, it must be him. Chu Liyue held her breath, her heart beating violently, and blood seemed to flow under her eardrums. Previously, she had already guessed that this was the territory of the Black Demon Cave, but she never thought that Mo Shiqian would be here too. In that case, wasn't this the headquarters of the Black Demon Cave? So they were hiding here. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows, revealing a look of realization. No wonder he had sent people to investigate before, but there had been no results. Mo Shiqian was really capable. He had directly left the Divine Ruins world and came here. What a good idea. Hearing this, Chu Liyue instantly understood Rongxiu's meaning and frowned slightly. So that was it. A few years ago, the Black Demon Caves suddenly disappeared without a trace, as if they had disappeared from the Divine Ruins world. Who knew? They were actually hiding outside the Divine Ruins world. In this world, who would have thought that they would make such a choice? Moreover, although they were outside the Divine Ruins world, this place was close to the Gate Realm, and the energy of heaven and earth was abundant. It was extremely suitable for cultivation, no different from the Divine Ruins world. If she had not come here today, who knew when she would have realized this? Understanding this, Chu Liyue's mind raced. She knew very well that Mo Shiqian wanted to snatch her zither score. Previously, she had always thought that the Black Demon Cave had chosen to retreat because Rongxiu had personally come and severely injured them. They had made this decision in order to avoid the sharp edge and recuperate. But now, she vaguely felt that this guess seemed to be somewhat wrong. Greetings, Sect Master. On the other side, when Hong'an and the others heard this voice, their expressions changed and they hurriedly bowed. Suddenly, the world fell silent. All the noise seemed to have dissipated at this moment. The berserk energy that had been wreaking havoc everywhere stopped flowing. The vast space seemed to be frozen in place. Chu Liyue could only hear the sound of his heart beating violently. Mo Shiqian's strength had obviously become more unfathomable. Finally, a cloud of black mist condensed in the air. A tall and straight figure stood there, faintly discernible like a ghost. Chu Luiyue held his breath. That person, it must be Mo Shiqian. However, in that instant just now, she actually didn't see clearly how he had appeared. In all directions, the void was calm, as if it had frozen. The moment his figure appeared, the surrounding heaven and earth energy and space did not fluctuate at all. There was still a considerable distance between them. However, Chu Luiyue still felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on her chest, making it hard for her to breathe. This person's strength could only be described as terrifying. Suddenly, Chu Luiyue felt an extremely dangerous gaze fall on him. Her hair immediately stood on end. It had been a long time since she felt like she was walking between life and death. At this moment, a warm and broad palm slowly grasped her hand. The warmth of the iron kept coming from above. A faint cold fragrance assaulted her, almost surrounding her. Rong Xiao, he was still here. She looked up. The two of them looked at each other. Rong Xiao smiled slightly and gave her a reassuring look. Chu Luiyue's heart instantly calmed down. No matter what danger she encountered or what situation she was in, he would always be by her side to protect her. Chu Luiyue blinked gently. That gaze finally moved away from her. Mo Shiqian frowned slightly. Could it be, that moment just now was an illusion? Putting those thoughts away, he looked up again and gazed ahead. I haven't been out for a while. I didn't expect you to give me such a big gift. He spoke slowly, his voice calm and emotionless. However, in the ears of Hong'an and the rest, these words were no different from a life and death warning. Domin took a deep breath and said, "It's all because of our incompetence to disturb sect master. Please punish us." In the end, the worst situation had occurred. But at this time, there was no other way. Life and death were all in the hands of master. Mo Shiqian ignored him and only raised his hand. Of course, when he did this, his hand was still wrapped in a layer of black fog. No one could see anything clearly. Then, Chang Wanzhou's body was pulled up by this shocking force. At this moment, a few of his ribs were broken and he had suffered some internal injuries. His entire body was covered in blood and dust, and he looked extremely miserable. He was on the verge of death and looked like he was about to die at any moment. However, he still held the cloud sky copper sword tightly in his hand. Rank 9 warrior. Mo Shiqian's voice suddenly carried a hint of a smile. Do Min, you're getting more and more promising. Do Min's face was pale. As a god, after attacking, his move was actually broken by a rank 9 warrior. If word got out, even he himself would feel embarrassed. He wanted to defend himself, but when he thought about how this person hated these things the most, he gave up in the end. He just stood there trembling in fear, waiting for the final result. Chang Wanzhou's body seemed to be supported by an invisible force as he floated quietly in the air. Mo Shiqian looked at him carefully. Your talent is not bad. Suddenly, his voice paused. He seemed to have discovered something as his fingers moved slightly. At this moment, Chang Wanzhou finally opened his eyes. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2012. His eyes were filled with wariness. His entire body was tense as if he was prepared to attack at any moment. However, such actions and threats were not worth mentioning in Mo Shiqian's eyes. He would not take a rank 9 warrior seriously. Even if this young man forcefully withstood Do Min's attack, it was just a small matter in Mo Shiqian's eyes. He raised his wrist gently. A strong force assaulted him. Chang Wanzhou's elbow went numb and he involuntarily let go. The cloud sky copper sword flew forward. Chang Wanzhou's expression immediately turned stern. Just as he opened his mouth, he felt as if an invisible hand was strangling his neck. His voice stopped abruptly, and his originally pale face quickly flushed red. The difference in strength between the two of them was too great. Furthermore, he was injured and could not fight against the other party at all. Hence, he could only watch as the cloud sky copper sword landed in Mo Shurchin's hands. Everyone was silent. The world was so cold and solemn that it seemed to have been completely frozen. Countless pairs of eyes looked at Mo Shurchin. Shock, reverence, fear, all sorts of emotions filled everyone's hearts. That terrifying oppressive might made it so that they couldn't even speak a single word. Seeing Mo Shurchin's actions, Chu Luo slowly clenched his fists. This aura is very familiar. Mo Shurchin weighed the cloud sky copper sword. After looking at it repeatedly, he confirmed his guess. He looked up at Chang Wanzhou again. You're her man. This was not a question, but a statement. He did not say who this sheath was. However, the meaning of his words could not be more obvious. Chang Wanzhou pursed his lips tightly and did not say anything. However, Mo Shurchin clearly did not need his answer. He would definitely not be wrong about this person's aura. Interesting. Indeed, like master, like servant. Mo Shurchin laughed, but there was no smile in his words. Chu Luo was not afraid of death, and so was this young man. He actually barged in here. Who let him in? Mo Shurchin suddenly asked. Hong An's legs turned to jelly and he looked at Do Min for help. At this time, he would only have a chance of survival if Do Min spoke up for him. However, at this moment, Do Min suddenly turned around and looked at him with furrowed brows. What are you waiting for? Didn't you hear the sect leader's question? Hong An was stunned, as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Do Min had already turned around and bowed. Replying to sect master, Hong An is fully in charge of this trial. Hong An's mind went blank. Do Min continued to speak with a pained and regretful expression. Back then, it was this subordinate's fault for choosing him. I didn't expect him to do such a thing. He deserved to be killed. This subordinate did not investigate properly. It is also a dereliction of duty. Sect leader, please punish me. His words sounded like he was asking for forgiveness, but in fact, he was pushing all the blame to Hong An. Do Min knew very well that he would definitely not be able to escape safely this time with such a big commotion. But at the very least, he had to protect his own life. As for Hong An, at this time, he could not even protect himself. How could he care about him? Hong An did not expect that Do Min, who had always favored him, would not leave him any leeway at this critical moment. He even pushed him behind his back. Did he think that he would not die quickly enough? For a moment, Hong An was also enraged. He immediately said, Sect leader, please investigate. This subordinate is really wronged in this matter. This subordinate, you did very well. Mo Shurchin was impatient to listen to their excuses, so he interrupted Hong An. Although he had been resting earlier, he was aware of everything that had happened. He was also very clear about what they were planning in their hearts. Now, he did not have the time to deal with this. Hong An was stunned. The two people beside him were also shocked. What did the sect leader say just now? He said, he did, very well. Hong An almost thought that he was hallucinating. He looked up in disbelief and glanced at Mo Shurchin. However, with just a glance, he sensed a warning and hurriedly lowered his head. It's a felony to bring them back in advance. However, this time, it's considered a crime. Mo Shurchin's meaning was very clear. It was because of this golden-haired youth that he did not intend to pursue Hong An's mistake. Hong An was shocked and confused, but more than that, he was happy to have survived a disaster. According to the sect leader, he would not die. In fact, he might not even be punished. And all this was because he brought back the golden-haired youth. Do Min was embarrassed. Mo Shirqian's words were undoubtedly like a slap to his face. But, what was the background of that golden-haired youth that the sect leader valued him so much? They were not the only ones. At this moment, almost everyone had the same question in their hearts. This golden-haired youth's talent and strength were not bad, but it did not seem to be to an exaggerated extent. Moreover, he had tried to fight Mo Shirqian just now. Such a person usually only had a dead end. What did he have that Mo Shirqian valued? Could it be that sword? Mo Shirqian put away the sword and sized up Chang Wanzhou again. Although this cloud sky copper sword was not a top-grade divine artifact, it was obvious that a lot of effort had been put into it. Chu Luiyue was willing to give this sword to him. It could be seen that this golden-haired youth had a close relationship with her. She can be said to be in the limelight now, Mo Shirqian muttered thoughtfully and chuckled. If she knows that you are in my hands, I wonder how she will react. She would not be in a good mood. Chang Wanzhou stared at the figure in front of him. Chapter 2013. Dead silence. The atmosphere became even colder. Mo Shirqian moved his fingertips. A young man flew up. What's his name? Mo Shirqian asked. The young man's face was pale as he shook his head in panic. I don't know, bang. As soon as he finished speaking, there was an explosion. It was the young man's body that suddenly exploded. Without any warning. It was extremely violent. He didn't even have time to beg for mercy or cry out in pain before he died. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. It was a shocking sight. This sudden scene caused everyone's hearts to tremble violently. Many people's expressions changed. Chu Luiyue also frowned. She knew that Mo Shirqian had always been ruthless. But she didn't expect him to be so. A scream was heard. He Xilan was suddenly caught by Mo Shirqian. What's his name? Mo Shirqian continued to ask. Obviously, he was just randomly picking someone to ask. If she answered that she didn't know or didn't say anything, she would probably die. He Xilan's face was as pale as a ghost. When had she ever encountered such a scene? Thinking of the miserable death of the young man just now, she was so scared that her teeth were chattering. Who was that golden-haired young man? What was his background? She really didn't know. He Ziji's forehead was covered in cold sweat, and his face was filled with despair. This time, he was afraid, Chang Wanzhou. At this moment, a clear and calm voice suddenly came from behind the crowd. Everyone looked over, but they were all stunned. The person who spoke was an ordinary-looking young woman. At this moment, she was looking up at the sky. He's from the Tianling dynasty. He Ziji opened his mouth and looked at Chu Luiyue in disbelief. She knew. She actually knew. Then what was her identity? Countless thoughts flashed through his mind, causing He Ziji to fall into deep confusion. The next moment, He Xilan's body suddenly flew backward. He Ziji hurried forward and barely caught her. The powerful impact made He Ziji fall heavily to the ground. The sound of bones breaking was heard. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He Xilan's situation wasn't any better. Both of them were in a sorry state. But even so, he still managed to keep his life. Some people looked at Chu Luiyue with undisguised anger. Obviously, in their eyes, Chu Luiyue had betrayed Chang Wanzhou by taking the initiative to answer. However, Chu Luiyue turned a blind eye to these gazes. She had her own plans. Mo Shirqian turned his gaze to Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue lowered his eyes slightly. Come here. Mo Shirqian said. Chu Luiyue walked forward. The others stared at her. Although they had different thoughts, they were afraid of Mo Shiqian and did not dare to say anything at this moment. Rong Xiao did not follow. In this almost suffocating atmosphere, Chu Luiyue walked to the front of the crowd. I said, come here. Mo Shiqian's hoarse and deep voice sounded like a death knell. Chapter 2014. Moreover, one of them was a venerable god and the other two were exalted gods. Under normal circumstances, even if 3 venerable gods fought him at the same time, he would definitely win. However, among the 3 of them, apart from Chang Wanzhou, one was Chu Luiyue and the other was Rong Xiao. These 2 people were not easy to deal with. In a flash, Chu Luiyue's sword aura had already landed. Mo Shiqian could not dodge and could only choose to fight head-on. With a flick of his wrist, the black mist around him quickly condensed into a long saber. The long saber was solid and suffused with a dark light. There was a faint scarlet color on it, as if it was outlining some kind of pattern. Clang! The 2 of them fought in close combat. Swish! The sharp sound of weapons scraping could be heard. Flames splattered everywhere. The powerful force made Chu Luiyue's hand go numb. She focused her eyes and saw that the pattern on Mo Shiqian's long saber was the totem of the Black Demon Cave. I was thinking of what method to use to lure you out of Peach Blossom Dock. I didn't expect you to come by yourself. Mo Shiqian smiled coldly and swung his saber. When he moved, the surrounding space quickly distorted. Chu Luiyue did not want to fight. When Mo Shiqian's long saber was about to swing over, she used the force to retreat. Swish! A black spatial crack tore open in front of Chu Luiyue. Her eyes were cold, and the reddish-gold flames quickly turned into a huge reddish-gold phoenix. Chu Luiyue leaped onto Dumpling's back. Whoosh! Dumpling flapped her wings and flew up. Chu Luiyue's mind raced. She had just wanted to test Mo Shiqian's strength. He was a venerable god. And he had reached the absolute peak. Chu Luiyue had fought with Yi Wentao before. In the Divine Ruins world, Yi Wentao was already publicly recognized as one of the best among the supreme gods. And Mo Shiqian in front of him was much stronger than him. With her own strength, she was definitely not a match for him. She had used 80% of her strength in that attack, but she hadn't hurt Mo Shiqian at all. That day, she was able to beat Yi Wentao because she had the advantage of time, place, and people, but today was different. This was Mo Shiqian's territory. Just as Mo Shiqian was about to chase after her, a cold wind suddenly came from behind. He knew something was wrong and immediately turned around. An extremely thin golden thread quickly flew over and wrapped around the long saber in his hand. Clang! Rong Xiao pulled his wrist, and the golden thread immediately tightened. Mo Shiqian knew Rong Xiao's strength. Seeing this, he let go of his hand without hesitation and threw the long saber out. Bang! A violent explosion was heard. It was Rong Xiao's finger pressing on the golden thread, and he suddenly moved it. The golden thread trembled, and the long saber connected to it was instantly reduced to dust by a terrifying force. The battle in the sky erupted fiercely. If they were slightly careless, he was afraid that they wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Now, they could only hope that the sect master could come out first. All Master Domin, what about those people? Hong An turned around to take a look, and some impatience appeared on his face. Lock them all up first. At this time, who still had the mood to think about these people? Yes. In the Black Demon Cave, other than Mo Shiqian, who was the sect master, the ones with the most authority were the few hall masters. When the incident happened, Domin happened to be present, so everyone subconsciously respected him. Although there were some problems before, compared to the current situation, it was not worth mentioning. Almost no one cared. Therefore, under Do Min's command, the entire Black Demon Cave quickly became alert. Everyone used the space formed by the huge golden barrier as the center, layer by layer, and waited. Hall Master Do Min, the sect master, is fighting 1 against 3. Will he be fine? Everyone was still a little worried about this. Especially since Rong Xiao is also here, the person who spoke lowered his voice. Do Min's expression was also a little solemn. Others were fine, but Rong Xiao, he was a real killing god. A few years ago, countless people in the Black Demon Cave had died at his hands. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. He looked dispirited and listless before, but in the blink of an eye, he seemed to have become a completely different person. He was already a high god. Even Chu Luiyue was surprised by this. Outside the divine ruins world, wanting to break through this layer of shackles was not easy. She asked softly, "Little Zhou, when did you break through to high god?" Chang Wanzhou looked at her. His exquisite and beautiful face was still stained with blood. A moment of hesitation flashed in his eyes. Swish. The sound of something breaking through the air suddenly came. Chu Luiyue suddenly looked up and his pupils constricted. The black mist on Mo Shiqian's body suddenly began to surge rapidly. A cold and bloody aura kept spreading. Then, 2 more figures appeared behind Mo Shiqian. There were 2 people who looked exactly like him. Thousand Shadows divine body. Digression, Khan, sort out the outline and adjust the update time. Starting at noon tomorrow, the update will start at 5 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 2016. The Thousand Shadows Divine Body was a legendary and extremely powerful divine body cultivation method. It was rumored that this divine body had been lost for a long time. Even Chu Luiyue, who had read countless related materials in Lingxiao College, had only vaguely heard of this name. As for the specific method of cultivation, she did not know. She did not expect to encounter it here today. Looking at the 3 identical figures, Chu Luiyue's eyes narrowed slightly. The Thousand Shadows divine body was powerful because the cultivator could refine more than one divine body. As one's own strength increased, the number of divine bodies one could possess would also increase. It was undoubtedly a great advantage when fighting with others. More importantly, the divine bodies that were cultivated possessed the same strength as the cultivator himself. In other words, the current situation was equivalent to 3 Mo Shiqians fighting against the 3 of them. The advantage of 3 against 1 was instantly disintegrated. When the 3 Mo Shiqians stood on the spot at the same time, the thick layer of black fog also divided into 3 parts and surrounded each of them. The black fog seemed to have thinned a little, but Mo Shiqian's face could not be seen clearly. However, even so, Chu Luiyue could still feel the cold and sinister eyes staring at her. "It's good that you're here. I want to see how powerful Peach Blossom Doc's Lord Yu is now." As Mo Shiqian spoke, he dashed towards Chu Luiyue. However, as soon as he moved, a golden thread instantly flew toward him. Mo Shiqian's eyes sharpened and he immediately dodged. In just a moment, Rong Xiao had already appeared in front of Chu Luiyue. His snow-white robe fluttered in the wind. There seemed to be a smile on his incomparably noble face, but his deep and cold eyes were filled with bone-chilling coldness. "Mo Shiqian, your opponent, is me." With that, Rong Xiao raised his hand and golden flames gushed out from his palm. Although the 2 divine bodies that appeared had the same strength as Mo Shiqian. Only by killing the real Mo Shiqian could it be considered a complete end. Mo Shiqian gritted his teeth. Originally, he wanted to make a move on Chu Luiyue. However, with Rong Xiao's protection, there was no way he could do anything for the time being. Unless, he could get rid of Rongxiu first. Good. Since that's the case, let's settle the old and new scores together. As soon as he finished speaking, Mo Shiqian's aura soared again. Whoosh! He waved his arm, and a black and red scythe appeared in his hand. Chu Luiyue recognized at a glance that this was not the long saber from before. It was condensed from the strange black fog around him. This was a real divine artifact. Furthermore, the pressure on it was extremely strong. Suddenly, a white light flashed in Chu Luiyue's mind. This was not a venerable artifact. This was a real, sacred artifact. Therefore, from the moment the two of them started fighting, Chang Wanzhou had already decided not to fight Mo Shiqian head-on. When the scene was in chaos earlier, Mo Shiqian had casually thrown the cloud sky copper sword out, and he had quickly snatched it back. At this moment, Chang Wanzhou was holding the cloud sky copper sword and only chose to attack from the side. Although he was not as strong as Mo Shiqian, he was agile. Every time Mo Shiqian planned to kill him, Chang Wanzhou would escape first. The two of them fell into an anxious battle. Time ticked by, second by second. The golden barrier was extremely tight, so much so that no one outside could see what was happening inside. Not even a sound could be heard. Gradually, the people who were waiting started to feel restless and uneasy. I wonder what's going on inside. Sect Master is at a disadvantage fighting the three of them. That might not be the case. Sect Master has just come out of seclusion and his strength has increased greatly. He might not lose to them. That's right. Besides, don't forget that Sect Master cultivates the Thousand Shadows divine body. Even if the three of them join forces, they might not be able to gain any advantage from Sect Master. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. From his point of view, Jun Zhoqing had the ambition of a wolf. He had long planned to take over the position of the family head. While he was trapped in the Peach Blossom Cove, he forcefully took action and easily became the new head of the family Yi. Now, Jun Zhoqing was high and mighty, but what about him? He had been reduced to such a state that he could not even freely enter and leave this courtyard. Yes, Jun Zhoqing was the successor that he had personally selected, but at that time, how could he have known that Jun Zhoqing was such a person? He could only blame himself for being blinded. He had actually been fooled. To think that he had personally handed the token to Jun Zhoqing, thinking about it now, it was extremely ironic. Of course, Yi Wentao was not going to sit still and wait for death. Therefore, after a few years of hibernation, he finally contacted his loyalists again. Of course, he had his ways. The black-clothed man in front of him was one of them. What Jun Zhoqing wanted was actually very simple. He wanted to regain everything that he had lost, to restore his strength and retake the family Yi. However, it was easier said than done. No matter which of these two things, to the current him, it was almost impossible for him to accomplish them. Therefore, from the beginning, he wanted to rely on external forces. This external force was naturally the Black Demon Cave. In the past few years, in order to avoid Rongxiu's investigation, he had been very careful and had cut off contact with his loyalists. Until this time, there was really no other way. Moreover, he had already fallen out with Rongxiu. Even if he knew about this, there was nothing to be afraid of. Now that he had nothing, what was there to be afraid of? But he did not expect that his desperate gamble of summoning loyalists and asking them to contact the Black Demon Cave would result in such a result. Obviously, without the help of that person, he would never be able to turn the tables. That was why Yi Wentao was so flustered and exasperated. When Rongxiu attacked the Black Demon Cave, if I had not sent several loyalists to help, how could they have had time to leave so smoothly? Now, they have turned against me. As he spoke, Yi Wentao coughed again. His face was still very pale, and there was a bloody and sweet taste in his mouth. Seeing this, the black-clothed man kneeling below asked worriedly. Master, your body. Yi Wentao shook his head. I'm already recovering. I'll be fine after a while. His voice still sounded a little weak. The previous battle had exhausted him too much. The few days when he was locked up in Peach Blossom Dock were even more devastating. If not for his good foundation, he would not have been able to hold on. Contact him again. The black-clothed man hesitated for a moment. Master, could it be that something has happened on the other side as well? Yi Wentao frowned. What? I personally think that even if the other side does not want to help, they would at least let me know and would not be so unresponsive. Also, that person should know about the current situation of family Yi and the Nan family, but until now, they have not done anything. Don't you think it's strange? Yi Wentao did not think so at first, but after hearing what he said, he instantly felt that something was wrong. He stood up and paced around the room, frowning and thinking for a long time. That's right. Both the Nan family and family Yi were in trouble. That person would definitely not be indifferent. After all, he was the one standing behind these two families. Now, he and Nan Yifan had been defeated. To a certain extent, it was also a humiliation to that person. How could he tolerate it? Perhaps, that person is still in seclusion. In the past few years, Yi Wentao had rarely contacted that person. He only knew that he spent most of his time in seclusion cultivating. No, if that's the case, the people below would not be indifferent. Yi Wentao suddenly stood still and opened his eyes wide. I'm afraid that something has really happened in Black Demon Cave. He turned his mind and looked at the black-clothed man. Have you been noticed by anyone recently when you came? The black-clothed man immediately said, No, I've always been cautious and did not dare to make the slightest mistake. Yi Wentao was still worried. He paused and asked again, What's the situation at Peach Blossom Dock and Yuntian Tower? The black-clothed man shook his head. It seems that everything is normal. I haven't heard any news recently. Yi Wentao's heart suddenly sank. Something has happened. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 2018. At this moment, familiar footsteps came from outside. Yi Wentao was shocked. The elder in charge of guarding the door had already spoken. Greetings, Master. Jun Joqing. Why is he here all of a sudden? Yi Wentao frowned and immediately turned around to give the man in black a look. The figure of the black-clothed person flashed and disappeared on the spot. Jun Joqing's voice was as casual as ever. I haven't been here for a few days and missed you. I thought I'd drop by to take a look. At this moment, he had already walked to the door and looked inside. How's the situation? The elder hurriedly said. Everything is normal. It's just that Master seems to be in a bad mood today. Jun Joqing smiled. Is that so? All the more reason to go in and take a look. With that, he pushed the door open and entered. The room was very quiet, and there was a faint bitter medicinal fragrance. Although Jun Joqing hadn't been here for a few days, he had always sent people to deliver medicine. He walked in and saw Yi Wentao. And the mess on the floor. Jun Joqing raised his eyebrows. You're really angry. What's wrong? Are the servants not serving you well enough? Yi Wentao sneered in his heart. Serve. During this period, he had been locked up here like a prisoner. How could anyone serve him? It was more like surveillance. Yi Wentao looked up and asked coldly. What are you doing here today? I've already told you everything that needs to be said the other day. His face was full of annoyance, and he was just short of chasing him away. Jun Juqing didn't care and smiled faintly. Nothing. I heard that you had a guest, so I thought I'd come to take a look. Yi Wentao's heart thumped hard. However, he was an old fox after all. He didn't show any guilt on his face. Instead, he laughed sarcastically. What did you say? Guest? I don't have anyone here other than you. Guest, where did you come from? Jun Juqing looked around. The air in the room seemed to have frozen. Patriarch, why do you have to do this? After a long while, Jun Juqing finally spoke. Thanks to your grace, I was able to become the young lord and ascend to the position of patriarch. If you continue to stay here like this, I guarantee that you will be able to spend the rest of your days in peace. Unfortunately, you don't seem to care about this. Yi Wentao said coldly. I don't know what you're talking about. For the past few days, I've been wondering how you managed to get in touch with that person. Jun Juqing suddenly interrupted his words, and there was a strange smile on his devilishly handsome face. Although Family Yi's family business is big, you're dealing with them as an individual. The rest of the family Yi knew nothing about this. Under such circumstances, what did you use to persuade the other party to join hands with you? Yi Wentao's throat went dry as he stared at Jun Juqing. What are you trying to say? Jun Juqing smiled and shook his head. You should know best what I'm trying to say. For the past few days, I've been thinking about it day and night, and I finally remembered something. He took a step forward. Yi Wentao didn't know why, but his legs suddenly went weak and he unconsciously took a step back. The two confronted each other. Jun Juqing's aura easily crushed Yi Wentao. Yi Wentao secretly regretted it. This retreat was a sign of guilt. Jun Juqing continued. I remember that a few years ago, when Rong Xiao went to the Black Demon Cave, that person was at a critical juncture of his cultivation and had almost no combat power. With Rong Xiao's temperament, if he could completely kill the other party, he would definitely not leave the slightest chance of survival. But that time, the Black Demon Cave actually escaped and found another place to go. This meant that although Rong Xiao caused serious damage to the Black Demon Cave that time, he did not really threaten the other party's foundation. With every word Jun Juqing said, Yi Wentao felt more pressure in his heart. Seeing that he was silent, Jun Juqing asked softly. Don't you think someone helped you? Bang! Yi Wentao took a step back and accidentally knocked over the chair behind him. The high-quality rosewood chair fell to the ground with a dull thud. Master, what's wrong? The elder outside the door heard the sound and quickly knocked on the door to inquire. Jun Juqing said lightly, It's nothing. You don't have to come in. Yes. The elder was also a smart person. When he heard this, he immediately responded and obediently continued to guard the door. The room fell into a short period of dead silence. It seems that what I said was true. Jun Juqing laughed. Although it was a question, his tone was very certain. I didn't. Yi Wentao opened his mouth and wanted to deny it, but Jun Juqing's words made him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Don't you find it strange that after so long, no one has come to receive you? Even the news you sent out was not responded to. Yi Wentao suddenly felt a chill in his heart, causing his whole body to turn cold. You, he widened his eyes and looked at Jun Juqing in disbelief. Jun Juqing, knew. I heard that those were the talents that you carefully nurtured for several years and spent a lot of time and effort on. What a pity. Yi Wentao's heart was in a perilous situation. Jun Juqing suddenly tilted his head and looked at the void behind Yi Wentao. Then, with a flick of his wrist, a vigorous force transformed into a long whip and suddenly flew out. Smack! The void was forcefully cut open, and the man in black who had just been hiding was directly pulled out. His neck was tightly bound by the long whip, and he could not break free. Seeing this, Yi Wentao's usual calm facade could no longer be maintained. You knew all along. Jun Juqing did not say anything and exerted force. Crack. The crisp sound of bones cracking was heard. Finally, the man in black's neck tilted, and he stopped breathing. He was not weak, but Jun Juqing struck first and did not give him any chance to breathe. That was why he died. The man in black lay on the ground, and thick red blood slowly flowed out from under his body. The thick smell of blood quickly spread out. Yi Wentao's lips trembled, and his face was pale. At this point, what was there to not understand? It's not that I knew all along. Jun Juqing looked up and glanced at Yi Wentao. You can't hide it, so isn't it normal for others to know? Previously, he only had his suspicions and did not have any evidence. However, he knew that Yi Wentao would definitely not let the matter rest, so during this period of time, he had been sending people to secretly keep an eye on him. Sure enough, he found something. There was no such thing as an airtight wall in the world. Besides, Jun Juqing was already prepared and was waiting for him to walk into the trap. Yi Wentao trembled all over, and there seemed to be a fire burning in his chest, but his body was still cold to the bone. He knew that this time, he was really finished. You. How do you know so much? About Black Demon Cave, about that person, about everything. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2019. At first, he hadn't noticed, but now he remembered that Jun Juqing's words were very strange. Not many people knew that Rongxiu had gone to the Black Demon Cave. Most people in the entire Divine Ruins world thought that the Black Demon Cave had suddenly chosen to hide from the world and disappeared without a trace. There were very few people who knew what had happened at that time. Not only did Jun Juqing know, but he also knew very well. He even knew that the person in the Black Demon Cave was at a critical moment and couldn't make a move. This matter was extremely confidential, and Jun Juqing had nothing to do with it. How did he know so much? Yi Wentao really couldn't figure it out. He looked at Jun Juqing with a complicated expression. Only now did he realize that he didn't know much about Jun Juqing. This person was extremely dangerous. Jun Juqing didn't answer his question. He knew a lot of things, so why should he tell Yi Wentao, who was already crippled? It seems that I really overestimated you. Jun Juqing smiled faintly. After so many years, it's really a miracle that Family Yi hasn't been implicated by you. Don't worry, Family Yi is definitely several times better in my hands than in yours. In the future, you should continue to rest here quietly. With that, he turned and left. It seemed that he didn't want to say so much to Yi Wentao. Obviously, he came this time to deal with the black-clothed man. And also to cut off Yi Wentao's last path of retreat. Yi Wentao's eyes were bloodshot. Stop right there. He suddenly let out a roar. Jun Juqing stopped in his tracks and looked back. Boom! A cluster of green flames suddenly burst out from Yi Wentao's body. Jun Juqing's pupils shrank. Yi Wentao was going to self-destruct. He was crazy. Yi Wentao was indeed crazy. The black-clothed man's death and Jun Juqing's words were the last straw that broke the camel's back. He thought that he still had a chance to turn the tables, but now, everything was in vain. He didn't need to think about it to know what kind of life he would live in the future. Like a prisoner, extremely lowly. Trapped in this place, never seeing the light of day. Until he died. Yi Wentao's life was proud and honorable. How could he bear such an ending? Since all hope was gone, he might as well die with Jun Juqing. Even though Yi Wentao was crippled now, he was still a top-rate revered god in the past. If he forcibly self-destruct, the consequences. At such a close distance, even if Jun Juqing didn't die, he would be crippled. Jun Juqing, however, the flames on Yi Wentao's body were spreading too quickly. He had already made up his mind to die, so he didn't hold back at all as he madly urged the origin power in his body to burn. A terrifying aura was rapidly gathering. Jun Juqing knew that something was wrong. He made a prompt decision and turned to run. Bang! He directly forced open the door. "Master, what's going on?" The elder guarding the door was shocked. He was about to ask when he saw a shadow flash before him. Before he could finish, a scorching and terrifying aura suddenly rushed out of the room. A deep sense of fear welled up in his heart, and he subconsciously looked inside. Yi Wentao had become a burning man. The accumulated power in every inch of his body was burning crazily. After all, he used to be a powerful god. The power in his body was extremely shocking. The elder immediately sensed the danger. Yi Wentao was going to self-destruct. Without a second thought, he immediately retreated. At this moment, he didn't have time to think about what had happened inside to make Yi Wentao make such a choice. There was only one thought in his mind: run. However, before he could run too far, an earth-shattering explosion suddenly came from behind him. A terrifying wave of qi gushed forth like a surging river, engulfing everything. Green flames covered the sky and earth. The elder was hit by this terrifying explosive force. His body flew out and was torn into pieces in midair. Then, he was swallowed by the green flames that were spreading crazily. From life to death, everything happened in the blink of an eye. Although Jun Juqing's reaction was extremely fast and he managed to escape further away, he was still unavoidably affected by this power. His chest shook and he spat out blood. At this moment, his internal organs felt as if they had been crushed by this power and were about to explode. His vision turned black and he fainted. This commotion quickly spread. The entire family finally fell into chaos. Chu Luyue and the others, who were far away in the divine ruins world, did not know what happened to the family Yi. However, Mo Shiqian had always been in contact with Yi Wentao. In the midst of the chaotic battle, his expression suddenly froze. He gritted his teeth and said hatefully, "Useless thing." Rong Xiao heard this. He narrowed his eyes slightly and then realized what had happened. His thin lips curled up slightly. It seems that the winner of the family Yi has been decided. You. Mo Shiqian looked up suddenly. You did it. Rong Xiao smiled faintly. There can't be two tigers on one mountain. Do you still need me to do such a thing personally? If he didn't do anything, the family Yi would turn the world upside down. After all, Yi Wentao and Jun Juqing were not easy to deal with. Judging from Mo Shiqian's reaction, Jun Juqing should have won. This was the same result he had expected. Mo Shiqian was furious. What he hated the most was Rong Xiao's always calm and collected appearance. It was as if nothing in the world could disturb his mind, and no one could gain the slightest advantage from him. No matter what kind of trouble he encountered, he always seemed to be victorious. What right did he have? Mo Shiqian was unconvinced and indignant. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. After the fight just now, his body was already riddled with injuries and bloodstains. However, Rong Xiao was much stronger than him. Although he was also injured and stained with messy blood, most of it was not his own blood. A few years ago, he was at a critical juncture of cultivation, so he could not fight Rong Xiao head-on. He thought that after such a long time, he could finally surpass Rong Xiao. Who knew, things did not go as he wished. Yes. He was cultivating, but Rong Xiao's strength was also increasing. If this went on, he would be the one to lose in the end. One had to know that Rong Xiao had not summoned his divine body yet. Moreover, he also had two divine bodies. On the other hand, the two divine bodies that he had painstakingly cultivated were now entangled by Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou. Chang Wanzhou seemed to be the weakest, but his endurance was extremely astonishing. It had been so long, but his speed and movement technique had not weakened at all. Needless to say, Chu Luiyue was even more so. Just the flowing clouds flying diagram alone was enough to give him a headache. Not to mention, she had the help of Dumpling, who had already opened the fifth meridian. Moreover, she still had a trump card that she had not revealed. This battle was most likely going to be very dangerous. Mo Shiqian thought quickly and made a decision. This could not go on. Blood Heaven Realm. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 2020. Following his roar, a copper mirror suddenly appeared in front of him. This bronze mirror was very similar to the one that Hongen had taken out before, but it was also different. The edge of this bronze mirror was engraved with mysterious runes. In the mirror, a sea of blood was surging. A fishy, sweet, and dense smell of blood suffused out from within, and it was mixed with the smell of decay, causing one to feel nauseous. Chu Luiyue's expression froze. She had seen this bronze mirror before. The previous few times, Mo Shiqian had not revealed his true appearance, and this bronze mirror had always appeared. At this moment, the Mo Shiqian in front of her suddenly retreated. On the other side, the divine body that had been fighting with Chang Wanzhou for a long time also retreated without hesitation. The three figures gathered and stood in one place. Then, the two divine bodies transformed into a cloud of black mist again and surged into the Blood Heaven realm. Mo Shiqian stood in front of the Blood Heaven realm with his hands crossed and his eyes closed. Then, a distant and heavy pressure suddenly spread out from the Blood Heaven realm. The void trembled and distorted. Alarm bells rang in Chu Luiyue's mind. She didn't even need to think before she shouted, "Dumpling!" Dumpling reacted extremely quickly. Its huge reddish-gold wings flapped and immediately rose into the air. Chang Wanzhou's eyes sharpened as he slashed down the cloud sky copper sword. In an instant, sparks flew everywhere, and several silver-white Tianlei forces surged out. In the blink of an eye, a barrier condensed in front of him. A black flame flashed in Rongxiu's eyes, but it disappeared in an instant. His palm moved slightly as if he was about to move, but after a moment of hesitation, he quietly retracted it and only tapped the tip of his foot and retreated. Almost at the same time. Boom! A loud sound was heard. In the Blood Heaven realm, a scarlet sea of blood surged violently. As the waves continued to rise and fall, a terrifying power surged out from within. The golden enchantment finally broke apart at this moment. In an instant, countless golden sparks scattered in all directions, almost illuminating half of the sky. "It's out!" When the people who were waiting outside heard this, their spirits were lifted. Countless pairs of eyes looked towards the center. Amidst the flashing lights, the bronze mirror suspended in midair immediately attracted everyone's attention. Everyone from the Black Demon Cave was overjoyed. Sect leader is indeed powerful. They knew very well that this was the sect leader's trump card. Sure enough, as soon as it was summoned, it tore apart Rongxiu's barrier. Suddenly, a low voice came from the crowd. "Why is there so much blood on Sect Master's body?" The crowd, which was still boiling with excitement, fell silent for a moment. Just now, when the barrier was broken, they were too excited and didn't notice it. When she heard this, she took a closer look and saw that there was more blood on Mo Shiqian's body than the other three. Although his body was still shrouded in a layer of black mist, it had become much thinner after a series of fierce battles. Clearly, he had used up a lot of energy just now. The Blood Heavenly Realm is the Sect Master's trump card. Since he's using it now, he'll definitely win. After a moment, someone said loudly. This was the Black Demon Cave's territory. There was no reason for these three to be so presumptuous. There was a reason for the previous incident, but this time, the same thing would never happen again. Just as everyone was about to besiege, Mo Shiqian suddenly said, "Everyone from the Black Demon Cave, listen up. Get into formation." No one dared to disobey the order. Chu Liuyue's heart sank. Without the protection of Rongxiu's barrier, the three of them were immediately in a dangerous situation. There were so many cultivators from the Black Demon Cave here. If they all attacked together, she was afraid. Thinking of this, she quickly turned her head to take a look. However, what she saw stunned her on the spot. The people from the Black Demon Cave did not go forward to attack. Instead, they spread out. They stood neatly and all of them did the same action. Their arms were crossed in front of their chests, their fists clenched, and their heads lowered slightly. Chu Luyue frowned. Why did they look more like they were performing some kind of ritual? As soon as this thought flashed through her mind, she saw spots of light appear one after another above everyone's heads. The spots of light were only the size of a fist and were not dazzling. They were faint blood red. It looked like a blood moon. Chu Luyue suddenly remembered the totem of the Black Demon Sword sect. Two swords cupping the moon. Moreover, it was indeed a blood moon. However, for some reason, this scene was inexplicably familiar. People of the Black Demon Cave, please protect us. Suddenly, Mo Shiqian opened his mouth and said something in a low voice. He stood in front of the blood heaven mirror, facing the blood-red mirror. This voice was filled with admiration and expectation, as if he was summoning something. Chu Luyue had never seen such a situation before and was puzzled for a moment. Mo Shiqian was seeking help. He's waiting for someone. Rongxiu's figure moved, and he came to her side as he spoke softly. Chu Luyue glanced at him. Waiting for who? Rongxiu raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly and did not answer. Chu Luyue slowly clenched her fists. In fact, the answer was not difficult to guess. At this time, of course Mo Shiqian was waiting for someone who could help them. However, who could it be? Suddenly, a figure slowly emerged from the sea of blood in the blood heaven mirror. Following this, an ancient voice could be heard. What's the matter? This voice seemed to come from a distant time and space, carrying an astonishing pressure. As soon as the voice fell, the surrounding space seemed to tremble. Mo Shiqian bowed and said, I had no choice but to disturb you. I really didn't want to. However, I'm in trouble this time. Please help me. He raised his hand and pointed at Chu Luyue. Please, kill the three people from Shangguanyu. Between heaven and earth, there was silence. Chu Luyue suddenly approached Rongxiu and whispered, Why do I feel this voice is so familiar? Before she finished speaking, the voice sounded surprised and happy. Little girl you, Users of mobile phones, please browse and read. A better reading experience came from Love Network. Chapter 2021. Chu Luyue was taken aback. This voice. Senior Diwu. She spoke with some uncertainty. The figure in the blood heaven realm gradually lost its blood-red color, revealing its original appearance. His face was kind, and he looked like an immortal. It was Diwu Zhangze, whom she hadn't seen for a long time. At this moment, those weathered eyes were looking at Chu Luyue with joy and longing. You, come and let this old man take a look. Mo Shiqian, who was originally full of confidence, was shocked. The people who were standing in the array were also stunned. What did he say? What did he just shout? You, It was obvious who he was shouting at. Even a fool could tell. Senior, you, Mo Shiqian was so shocked that his heart was trembling. He had spent so much effort to invite this person here to deal with Rong Xiao and Chu Luiyue. Why did the situation seem to be developing in an uncontrollable direction now? Diwu Zhangzi frowned impatiently and waved his hand. Hey, Mo Shiqian, right? Get out of the way first. Don't block my Yu from coming over. As he spoke, he tilted his head and shouted at Chu Luiyue with a smile. Girl! Come over. Mo Shiqian's body stiffened, and his mind went blank for a moment. For a moment, he almost suspected that he had heard wrongly. But in the blood heaven realm, Diwu Zhangzi's eager and happy smile at Chu Luiyue was enough to explain everything. Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment, but still chose to go forward. With Diwu Zhangzi here, no one dared to act rashly. She walked all the way to the front smoothly and bowed respectfully and obediently. You greets Senior Diwu. Diwu Zhangzi looked at her and sighed. I haven't seen you for a while. You has really become more and more beautiful. The corner of Chu Luiyue's mouth twitched. She slowly raised her hand and took off the mask on her face. Senior Diwu, you can say this later. She had that ordinary face of hers, yet he could still praise her like that. Diwu Zhangzi waved his hand. Sigh. Our Yu has always been the most beautiful girl in the world. Who would dare to question him? His words were filled with arrogance and pride. His words caused many people to look at Chu Luiyue. The woman wore an ordinary crimson dress, and her fine black hair fluttered in the wind. The face under the mask was as white as snow, with skin of ice and bones of jade. Her eyebrows were like distant mountains, and her eyes were like autumn waters. In particular, the free and easy feeling between her brows added to her elegance. Many people's eyes flashed with surprise. The legendary Sheng Wanyu, the princess of the Tianling dynasty, was like a legend. She was indeed the most beautiful woman in the world. Chu Luiyue laughed, his eyes curved into crescents. Don't tease me. Diwu Zhangzi looked at her and suddenly asked, You've cultivated a divine body. The reason why I came today is that there is a trace of my aura in the blood heaven realm. This is also left behind from back then. Diwu Zhangzi rubbed his temples in annoyance. In fact, he indeed didn't have any dealings with the Black Demon Cave. It was just that the relationship wasn't completely severed back then, which gave Mo Shiqian a chance. If he had known the situation here would be like this, he wouldn't have come no matter what. He was almost misunderstood by Diwu Zhangzi felt wronged. He had been trapped in the Red Moon Desert for so long, what else could he do? Everyone was speechless when they heard this. Diwu Zhangzi's attitude couldn't be more obvious when he sided with Chu Luiyue. Even if he was invited by Mo Shiqian. At this time, he was obviously still on Chu Luiyue's side. How could they fight? Mo Shiqian clenched his fists, and the waves in his heart couldn't calm down for a long time. He never thought that things would develop like this in the end. Diwu Zhangzi was actually Chu Luiyue's backer. Why hadn't he heard of it before? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. I remember, at that time, Sect Master Mo seemed to want to snatch something from me. She paused, and the smile on her lips deepened. A few years have passed, but Sect Master Mo is still very persistent about this matter. Not long ago, the family Yi and the Nan family joined forces and headed to Peach Blossom Dock to surround and intercept us. What nonsense are you talking about? Mo Shiqian shouted, the veins on his forehead bulging. Although Chu Luiyue was telling the truth, how could he admit it in front of Diwu Zhangzi at this time? Wasn't this purely attracting hatred? Diwu Zhangze was already very unhappy that he invited him over to kill her. If he knew that he had used so many methods previously, Diwu Zhangze would probably want to kill him. How is it nonsense? Chu Luiyue looked surprised. Didn't sect master Mo help transfer Nanyi's Yuan meridian to her brother? It's also because of this that Nan Yifan blamed Nanyi's death on me and hates me to the core. And family E, why do you think they suddenly had the idea of snatching Peach Blossom Dock? Moreover, they acted together with the Nan family. This is too much of a coincidence. What do you think? Chu Liuyue's words were very clear and logical. Even those who didn't know much about these matters could sense that something was amiss when they heard this. Obviously, someone was secretly instigating and sowing discord. And who this person was? It was even more obvious. Mo Shiqian clenched his fists tightly and looked at Chu Luiyue as if he wanted to tear him apart. Family E. Nan family. Little girl, they must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts to dare to make a move on you. A trace of shock flashed across Diwu Zhangze's face, and he instinctively glanced at Rongxiu. Rongxiu moved and walked forward with a faint smile. Driven by benefits, those people are naturally capable of doing anything. At this time, he had also removed the disguise on his face. There was a faint smile on his handsome and devilish face. Even if he was dressed in extremely simple and ordinary clothes, it couldn't hide his peerless beauty. When the two of them stood together, the surrounding scenery immediately paled in comparison. Even if they didn't do anything, it would always make people involuntarily look over. His features were picturesque and his charm was unparalleled. That's the princess's husband. The legendary Holy Son of the Yuntian Tower. He Ziji looked at this scene in a daze and muttered in a low voice. Although they hadn't been to the Divine Ruins world, rumors about these two people had already spread among many cultivators in the past few months. In fact, this news was first spread by the people of the Black Demon Cave. The main purpose of doing this was to attract those genius cultivators to Cloud State City to participate in their trial. They didn't expect that Chu Luiyue and Rongxiu would actually appear here directly. When they thought of how they had interacted with these two for so long and even owed them a favor, Ziji and his sister couldn't help but look at each other and see the shock and disbelief in each other's eyes. No wonder she's so strong, Xilan subconsciously said in a low voice. To think that they were talking about the princess in front of those two, but they didn't expect that. The real princess was right in front of them. Seeing that Diwu Zhangze was still angry, Chu Luiyue smiled and comforted him. However, Senior Diwu, you don't have to worry too much. Those troubles have been resolved. Nan Yifan is already dead. As for Yi Wentao, he's also dead. If I'm not wrong, it should have happened just now. Rongxiu added. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows slightly and glanced at him. Since Rongxiu said so, it should be close to the truth. It seemed that Yi Wentao's life after returning wasn't easy. He even died in such a short time. Jun Zhiqing still had some tricks up his sleeve. Chu Luiyue thought to himself. To be able to ascend to the position of family Yi's head with a different surname was not simple. Now that Yi Wentao was dead, the entire family Yi was in his hands. Hearing this, Diwu Zhangze finally calmed down a little. These days, any dog dared to touch their Yu. Did they really think that they couldn't support you, just because they were trapped in the Red Moon Desert? His gaze was cold as he asked word by word. Mo Shiqian, what do you want to steal from you? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.